to my computer. All right. Daniel, I am old. I am 44. I am ridiculously old. I have been and had a couple careers that, people always say like what you get like a couple careers or something like that in your life. I have not been doing Facebook ads all my life. Uh I've been doing Facebook ads didn't exist. It's funny when I was a teenager or something like that, I asked my dad like what do you think I'll be when I grow up? And he's like, what you're going to be doing probably hasn't even been invented yet. And he was right. So what we're going to do is let me go ahead and give us a quick intro of our call today for people. We'll dive into some questions here and talk about some stuff here in a minute. But what we're going to be doing today is talking about optimization. We're going to be talking about, hey, should I turn off ads? When do I cut budgets? When do I raise budgets? How do I go about optimizing things once they're ready and they're rolling? So, a lot of what we're going to be talking about here today is just kind of foundational, good practice, but some of it's going to be really kind of cutting edge and pretty new. Some best practices that have changed in Facebook that you advanced people, you expert people, maybe kind of some good theory, because I'll kind of give you this, spoiler alert, like a lot of the way that people optimize and they turn things on and off has radically changed in the past year or two or three, uh, based on a lot of the changes to the Facebook algorithm and where it's heading. And it will probably only increase and get even more in line with what we're going to talk about here today. So that's what we're going to be doing. Also, we're going to be getting into a little bit of automated rules because people ask about that. But before we dive into that, man, we can just kind of chat and see what's going on. If anyone has, I think was it Daniel, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Like one
Yes.
of my ad accounts just stopped working. I think probably because of the lag. Like that's my theory is that it happened because of a number of reasons. Like the sales page was too simple, there wasn't enough creative testing and etc. So now I'm just kind of like trying to rebuild it and trying to make sure that it doesn't happen again. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So okay. So it kind of just declined because it was working for a while and then things just slowly declined. Now it's not in a good
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
How do you rebuild it?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I take the approach, I think there's like I always tell people if you get 100 good media buyers in a room, I'm talking good people, pros, right? You get them in a room, you're going to have 100 different ways of doing things. I a lot of times play to my strengths. So the way I'm a very creative focused media buyer. I believe that I have a decent grasp of copy and I can be a pretty decent Facebook copywriter, can come up with some good ads, have some good image ideas, video ideas, things like that. And I think being in the NHP community, I would imagine I'm not alone, right? A lot of us are good at that psychology aspect and the messaging aspect. So I'm to the point where I play into those strengths. So if I'm taking over an account, I would be doing some new ads. Like whenever I take over a client, I'm cranking out new ads. That's pretty much almost always one of the very first things that I'm doing. Like a lot of times I may do a little bit of dialing things in while I'm building the creatives, but that's the way I would go. So if I'm like, okay, I've got to turn around this account, a lot of times that's going to happen with really, really, really good creatives. So evaluate what creatives have worked there in the past. What can you learn from them? What can we optimize, learn from that to do a better job, to iterate on that and optimize, and then crank out some really good ads. From that, it would almost be like how I would start with a new account, right? So let's kind of start with these ads and let's just build foundationally up. Go to you have control audiences maybe that have really worked. Go to those control audiences. Try to go as broad as you can while it still works. Have really, really, really good ads. Test a bunch of ads. And then, as I talked about in the campaign structure, I would have that campaign structure independently. All of those test ad sets, I'm independently scaling those up, and then moving into different scaling environments. That's kind of the play, but basically comes down to new ads. Does that kind of help?
Got it. Yeah,
Cool.
it does a follow-up question to what you did with the whole structure. I looked at that. Do you believe in the whole top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel structure? Like some people do that in their ad accounts.
Uh, Typically. No, I have to clarify the structure that I talked about was for AC funnels, right? I would have a different
Got
approach
it.
for different funnels. If I'm doing a webinar funnel, that to me is something different,
Mm.
right? Where I could
Got it.
have that top of funnel webinar, and then I might have more bottom of funnel. Hey, you opted in for the webinar. Let me pitch you on, the offer, right? Or you opt in for a webinar. You want to do a book a call. Let me pitch you on booking the call. For those types of things, I would have kind of that funnel strategy, which is based off of where they are in that funnel, like what step is kind of their next step. But in typical, like, also if I had ecom and it was like a high price point, I might consider that as well. You're talking about
Got
something
it.
that's like $500 or something. I might have that top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, because there's just maybe some more consideration that goes into that. But for a typical AC funnel where we're talking about a $27 price point, I don't typically worry about top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Everything's all together. Now, we'll talk about this a little today, but you can have ads that may serve a bottom of funnel function, even if they're going to your top of funnel audiences. And so in other words, my targeting may be broad, but I have an ad that's really talking about a testimonial or dealing with objections. And that Facebook may choose to serve that to people who are closer down the bottom of
Mm.
funnel, people who have abandoned cart or something like that. But it's still in my top of funnel audience targeting. Cool.
Got it. So what you're saying is that at that price point, it doesn't make sense to go into that much segmentation.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's just not
Got it.
cost effective. Plus, it's not only the economics of getting in front of them, but it's just simply the consideration. Like, who's going to really think for years and years and years about a $27 purchase? It's kind of you do it or you don't, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
makes sense. Makes
and
sense.
there's a chance to get in front of someone again, but maybe they just for whatever reason they didn't pull the trigger now and they'll pull it later, or
Got it.
they saw it on their phone and but Facebook does a lot of that for you, right? It's not that I'm against retargeting or that I think it has no purpose. It's that Facebook does a lot of that for you now with your audiences if you don't
Got it.
specifically exclude those. Cool.
Got it. So according to you, it doesn't make sense to go for those website page visits and the people who just opted into the checkout but didn't purchase. Like Facebook does that automatically.
Yep, I wouldn't worry about it. Yep, there would be very, very, very few instances that I would even think about that. The only time I might even do it, because there's always like, it's never hard and fast, like always do this, always do this. Like
Yeah,
if I were taking over,
obviously.
yeah, if I were taking over for an account and like they just had a really bad ROAS and they're like, gosh, we need to get profitable. And they had a bunch of website visitors. I might target my website visitors and get an immediate little burst, right? Just to help them get a little bit of cash flow real quick. Like there might be it's a tool that I might use sparingly, but for the most part, no.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool.
Last question.
Of course.
Like in the brand kits, there is like this short page AC funnel and then there is the long page AC funnel. So my thinking was to like kind of like start with that long page and then for all the people who have visited the website and all that stuff, target them with the short page. Like, is this worth doing or what do you think about this?
You could give it a shot. Yeah, honestly, I've never tried that before. But
Mhm.
you could give it a shot, see how it works.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. All right, Jan, I think you said you had a
Yeah, quick
is it
one.
Jan or is it Jan?
Thank you for asking. I was gonna say if I don't do it the first time, I gotta live with Jan for the rest of the relationship. So
No worries.
it's
Is
um
Jan?
yeah, it's Yano. Thank you for
Okay,
asking.
cool. Cool.
Okay, so I've been rocking and rolling with a lot of the stuff on this call, man. It's the first time I showed up live, but I want to ask you a specific question about so for a small amount of context, we do primarily local advertising for clients. So I'm always just trying to think about how to get different pockets of the same audience. And one of the things I've noticed is like, Facebook seems to be showing different ads for video versus image or a vertical video versus a landscape video or something like that. And I was just kind of wondering how you like to think about that, like specific to mixing up like ad sets versus ads within an ad set. Because like typically right now we're doing like, okay, like three videos, one body copy in an ad set, and then we'll refresh it or whatever. But how do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do believe in creative diversification. I believe that there are
Mm,
people who may engage with an image and other people may engage with a video, and there's different people engage with different placements in different ways. There's also inventory opportunities, right? If
Mm.
all that we're doing is just in the feeds, that limits our ability to get in front of people. Whereas if we have the ability to go to stories, reels, carousels, things like that, we can just get that much more inventory and perhaps give Facebook an opportunity to get in front of our ideal prospect. When I'm doing creative testing, I don't like to mix formats, right? If I'm doing
Mm.
creative testing, I like to test videos together. I like to test images together. Once I've found proven winners in my scaling environments, it'll be carousels mixed in with images, mixed in with videos, mixed in all together.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Like within one ad set, or do you like to do just
Mhm.
kind of like, okay, gotcha. That's
Yep, yep,
interesting.
yep.
Okay.
That's just typically how I like to do it. Put them all in an ad set. Like these are my tested, proven winners.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. I'm gonna try that out, Lauren.
Yeah, give
Thanks
it
for
a
that.
shot. Give it a shot. Well, cool. Well, we will dive into what we're talking about today. Again, for those just jumping on, we're going to be talking about optimization. But first, do we turn ads on, off? Like, how's that work? How do we adjust budgets? Do we raise it by 20% every 3 days or 10% every day? Or how's that, double it, duplicate, double it every 4 days? Like, what exactly do we do? Right. And as we'll be talking about, there's some new kind of changes to the algorithm and some new changes to the best practices, particularly related to turning ads off and things like that. So we'll be getting into that. But before we get into that, let's kind of have our little tactical appetizer of the week. I like to kind of say, all right, let me show, let me teach you guys. Okay, here we go. Let me teach you guys, some tactical tips that you can use, other than just the theory we're going to be talking about a little later on. So a lot of times I get questions about automated rules, and I'll kind of show you just a brief little introduction on automated rules. Now, this is just an account. I feel really weird showing client accounts and things like this. So this is just an old inactive account I have access to, which is why, there's no spend or anything like that going on. So one way to work with automated rules is you can select, I just have the campaign level here. You can just select campaigns, right? And then whatever campaigns you have selected, you come up here to this more section and you click on where it says automated rules, you click on create a new rule. And what that will do is it will, give you this chance just that I want to do a custom rule. And now all of a sudden I can come up with a rule that is applied to these 5 selected campaigns, the campaigns that I have selected right here. Or what I could do is, hey, I want to apply the rule to active ad sets in those campaigns or active ads in those campaigns, right? This is a good way if you want to make sure that you're applying rules to just one campaign in specific or one ad set or a group of ad sets or whatever. This is a good way to come in here and to do something like that. So one thing I've done before is I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, let's just say I want to turn these 5 campaigns on and I want to turn them on at, after midnight, right? If I were to turn these campaigns on right now, they would blow through their entire daily budget in the rest of today. If it were to be 10 p.m. tonight in the account time zone, which is Eastern, if it were to be 10 p.m. tonight and I turn on these campaigns, they would blow through their entire daily budget in 2 hours. So one thing you can do is you can come in here. I think I've covered this before, but we can just whenever I'm coming up with like a one-time rule, like turning something on, I like to call it DEL for like I can delete this later, or one time turn on campaigns, and I normally say the date, right? So, and actually we'll set this, we just wanted this to go live tomorrow morning. So now when I come down here, it's going to apply to these 5 selected campaigns, and what's going to happen? I want to turn them on. And when do I want it to happen? What I'm going to do is I'm going to select current time. And if I were to select right here is greater than, let's just say I put it in, I'm going to do it wrong to teach you, and then I'll come back and do it right. If I were to just say, all right, April 17th after midnight, and I were to just add that, boom, and I were to go ahead and create this rule, now these campaigns I could never turn off, because as soon as I turn them off, they're going to turn back on, right? Because this rule is always going to say, hey, it's after midnight on April 17th. So as soon as I turn it off, the rule is going to say, oh, it's after midnight on April 17th. It's after this point, and it'll turn them back on. So what you want to do is, I want to do is between. right? So the current time is between April 17th at midnight, and let's just say April 17th at like 3 a.m. Give the rule some time to activate. Now, all of a sudden, if I create this rule, which I'm not going to do because I don't want to turn back on these campaigns, but if I were to create this rule, what it would do would then, this would create a rule that turns on these campaigns I've selected. If it'll execute between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. Rules don't run like minute by minute. They may run every like half hour, 45 minutes, hour. So you want to give it like some time frame to run in. And then this would turn on and you don't need to worry about it, right? So you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night and worry about turning campaigns on at just the right time. You could set up this rule. So let me go ahead and show you. This is one way you can deal with automated rules is you can have the manual campaign selected. Now, what can we do with this, right? Well, we can turn off the campaigns. We can, if they were on, they're not on right now, but it would allow us to adjust budgets and all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of conditions that we could look at, like time and everything else like that. We'll get to that in a minute. But the first thing is if you want it to apply to certain select campaigns or ads or ad sets, select them in Ads Manager and then go to, oh, Zoom's in the way here. And then go to More right there, create a new rule, okay? Another way is if you just navigate this little menu right here and you want to go to Automated Rules right there. What that'll do, that'll take you to this section right here where you'll have your automated rules listed. These were just ones that I created this morning. And what this will show us is some examples of rules that we could we could potentially do. Let me kind of walk you through. Excuse me. I don't know. I'm getting choked up. Oh man, it's gonna be a rough day. Let me get a cough drop. Sorry. Maybe I got a little bit of a niggling cough that's still bugging me, but okay. Let me do this cough drop. I think I'll be all right. Sorry about that. All right. So, and let me look right here. Okay, cool. All right. So, this is, I'll kind of just walk you through how you create rules, right? Now, if you create a rule this way, where you come into this section, you can't select those campaigns, right? Like the way I did it previously, I had those exact campaigns selected. This way I can just select all active campaigns, all active ad sets, all active ads. Or what I can do is, let's say I want to turn on ad sets. Well, then I could select all paused campaigns, all paused ads, all paused ad sets, right? So if I do send the notification only, it's active. Okay, so this is just how you can select everything that's active. So if you really want to select certain select ones, you use kind of the previous way I showed you. If you want them to apply account wide, you would use this method. Now, what can we do? All sorts of stuff. We can turn on and off. We can increase budget. We can decrease daily budget, increase lifetime budget, like if you have a lifetime budget ad set or campaign. We can, I don't even know what this is. I've never even used this scale daily budget by target field. Oh, okay. This is interesting. Oh, okay. This is if you have different objectives and stuff like that, right? Increase our manual bids, decrease manual bids. So there's all sorts of things that we can do. I'll tell you, I'm going to walk you through some of the options, but I really don't use a lot of rules. And I'll tell you why, a little later. Like I like to look at a little more comprehensive view of the data than what Facebook is looking at here. There are some times I would use them and there are times I have used them. So this is more of like here's what you can do. And I'll talk a little about some particular rules that may be cool, but I really don't use these too terribly much, to be honest. So anyway, you can select active ad sets, active campaigns. You can select all sorts of different things to do. All right, let's just say we'll put it on active ad sets. And if we want to do increase daily budget, you set a percentage, right? So we could say, I want to increase it by 10%. Okay. Then when you're doing stuff like that, a lot of times it says like, what is the maximum daily budget you want to reach, right? So that you don't accidentally scale up to several $1 million. So you just put it in, like, let's say we put 25,000. how often are you going to take this action? In other words, if we're increasing the daily budget, this is your action right here. If we're going to increase the daily budget by 10%, how often are we going to do that? We can do it hourly, once every 12 hours, daily, weekly, bi-weekly, right? So if we're going to scale daily, we could probably put it right there. Or we want to do this weekly. Or hey, we're really aggressive, we could do it hourly, right? Whatever we want to do. This is how we can, the different frequencies that this rule will be activated and make a change. All right. And what are the conditions? In other words, all of these have to match. If these, because we can add multiple conditions, right? And if all of these conditions are true, then this action is going to take place to this, these assets that we've selected to be adjusted. Okay. So what are some conditions that we can put in? Well, we can look at spend, lifetime spend, I mean, all sorts of metrics that we can look at. One thing to look at is under this, we have a time range. The maximum is just 37 months. I don't know really why it goes back that far. But if we wanted to say like just the last 7 days, in other words, let's talk about a cost per result. Okay, cost per result. We want to increase the budget by 10% if the cost per result is, let's just say it's really good, right? So let's just say our target CPA is $50. If our cost per result is under $50, then and in the last 7 days, right? So that's the time range that it's going to look at to see, is my CPA under $50? And if it is, for the last 7 days, if it's under $50, it would increase this daily budget by 10%. And that would take place every 12 hours, as long as the last 7 days shows a CPA of under $50. Now, one thing you'll notice right here, anytime you add one of these rules, Facebook likes you to add lifetime impressions greater than 1,000. If we take this away, it's like, hey, we recommend that you put this in, right? It's basically just saying you're not going to adjust the budget on something if it's only had like 10 impressions or 100 impressions, right? It hasn't really got to a good average yet. So that's why Facebook recommends that you put this in. So now that we kind of know, here's what you can do, let me kind of walk through some rules and I'll show you some more perspective on some examples of what we can do with this. This is a rule I've used before. I like to, let me walk you through what it does, and then I'll kind of come back. This I would use on retargeting ad sets, right? Retargeting ad sets, sometimes what happens is like, if you really raise the budget, it's just slamming this small audience, and it gets to slam the audience so hard that your results actually trail off. So a lot of times I like to adjust the budget of my retargeting so that my frequency is within a certain line. And generally that would be like, if it's more than 2.5 yesterday, I think I'm probably hitting my retargeting too much, right? And this is in general. This isn't like, there are times if I've got a big urgent sale or something like that, I might be okay with that. But generally, if I am just doing my like 30-day, retargeting or evergreen retargeting of maybe people who have opted in the last 30 days or something like that. And I know I just mentioned I wouldn't do a lot of it for AC offers, but there are times I would do that for other types of offers. So I would just say, if the frequency yesterday is greater than 2.5, then I want to reduce my daily budget by 10%. But I've got a problem, right? This applies to all active ad sets. How do I make it apply only to my retargeting ad sets? Because I don't want it to apply to every single ad set, right? I want to apply only to my retargeting ad sets. How could I do that? Well, there's one way. I could go back and do it the way we had done before, and I could just select every single retargeting ad set. And then there are ways like every time you add a new retargeting ad set, you got to go in and you got to add it. You could do that. I don't like to do it that way personally. I like to do it with a different way, which is I like to put kind of codes in the name of the ad set. So what I'll do is, if I have an ad set that's retargeting and I want to use this rule to adjust it, I would put open bracket FREQ for frequency, close bracket. I'd put that in the name of the ad set. Any ad set that I want this rule to adjust, right? To be able to adjust the ad set, any ad set that I want it to apply to, I would put bracket FREQ, close bracket in the name of the ad set. Now, what the conditions are here is, if the frequency is greater than 2.5, and this is just yesterday, And remember, because this is all of the following match, and the ad set name contains FREQ, then it's going to adjust the budget down by 10%. Okay. And you could create another budget, another rule that's like adjust the budget up if the frequency is so low or something like that. But this just gives you an example of this is a way that you could do it. Now, the schedule, I would just want to do this daily, right? I don't want to do it right here. I've selected once daily, and I'm just going to run this daily between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. Instead of running it all the time, just to see, that happens once a day. And my daily budget floor, again, what's the lowest it will reduce to would be $1. Well, okay, so this is one type of rule. And let me show you right here. So anyway, you set how often do you want this rule to be checked, right? This shows you how often you want adjustments to be made. This shows how often you want the rule to be checked. So you may want the rule to be checked all the time, but then only take actions once daily. Those are two different things. This just tells you you'll get notified if the rule executes, right? Well, so, okay, what's another rule? Here's another one, and I actually do this one pretty often. You may remember I've talked about compliance, and one of the things I like to do with compliance is if I have an ad that gets rejected and I can't get it approved, what I like to do is I like to go in there and just whitewash that ad and abandon it. Or I also call that DNUing an ad. I will edit that ad so that it has the most vanilla copy, the most vanilla image, the most vanilla landing page, and I will publish it just to get it approved, right? So that rejection kind of goes away. Now, what I'll do then is in the ad name, I will put open bracket DNU close bracket, right? Which is an indication to me, do not use. That's what the DNU stands for. I don't want to use this ad. I don't want to turn it on ever again. So I'll put DNU in the ad and I'll turn it off. Now, I had a problem one time with, a client who he liked to play with automated rules and everything like that. And he had a rule that like if an ad had good results, he would turn it back on. Well, these DNU ads technically had good results because they had good results before they got rejected, right? So in the ad metrics, it looked like it was good results, but now it's a different ad. It's this vanilla ad that I would never want to run. So I had to create these rules. He would keep turning those back on with these rules, and I would be like, "Hey, this is a problem. We need to turn these off," and or otherwise you get this ad running that like is totally vanilla ad. It's taking some random landing page. Like, why are we running this ad? So this is why I created rules like this. I want to make sure that if the ad name contains DNU, then we just turn it off, right? It applies to all active ads. It's going to turn off the ads. If the ad name contains DNU, make sure it's turned off, and this just goes continuously. So this is an example of something we could do with a rule, right? Another example is, what if I want to scale up? I haven't done too much of this, but I'll show you just what's possible. The name of this rule is scale ABO, scale by 20% on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if the CPA is less than $30. I like to just make the rule name very plain what's happening. And I don't like to call it like scaling rule. Because what does that mean, right? I like to make it where I could look at this instantly and know the details about this rule. But what happens on active ad sets? I'm going to increase the daily budget by 20%. Just, maximum daily budget's huge. I'm going to do that once a day. And here are the conditions. Again, this is lifetime impressions that Facebook makes you put on there, right? If I took it off, you could still do it, but they give you this warning. So I could just leave it on, like no big deal. But if I say, all right, the ad set in the last 7 days, if the cost per result is less than $30, okay? If the lifetime spent, because actually what you can do is you can put cost per result is smaller than $30. And then if you come in here, these little 3 arrows, you can really specify the time range and the whether you want it to add the ad set or campaign level. All right. So, and if the lifetime spent is greater than $150, so that, I don't want to do this if the ad just launched. And if the campaign name contains open bracket, scale ABO, close bracket, right? This is another way I like to use these names to create rules. So rather than remembering, oh, I just launched another ad set in my scaling campaign, let me make sure that this rule is going to apply to it. I got to go back in here and I got to select it, and it just gets to be a pain. This way, I only have to create this rule one time. See, I don't like to create a lot of rules. Like the fewer rules I can create, the better. because they can get kind of wonky. You can make one mistake and like totally mess up your account, right? And I just had this actually happen just a couple of days ago. A client of mine was messing with the rules, and he accidentally turned off every single ad in the campaign. It just, and I realized it an hour later, turned everything back on, and we kind of recovered. So it wasn't the end of the world. But I generally I don't like to make rules again and again and again and again and again if I don't have to, because it's just a ripe opportunity for human error. So I like to create a rule one time, just put like scale ABO. If that's in the campaign name, this rule is going to apply. And then I just make sure that I put that in my scaling campaign. If it's an ABO and I want to scale it, right? I just put that in the campaign name, and then every single ad set in there is going to be under these rules. And so I'm saying, all right, if the last 7 days, look back, we have better than $30 CPA, I want you to scale it up by 20%. Now we can do this on a schedule, right? We've done it continuously. It would do it all the time. It would check the rule all the time, and it would run once daily. Or you could check it daily, or I'm going to check it on a custom schedule, right? I don't want to do this every single day. I only want to do it maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? So that I boost it by 20% every other day. So I only want to run it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday between 12 a.m. and 11 p.m. And remember, it's only running once a day, right? So I'm only going to check this Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If the last 7 days CPA is under under $30, it's going to boost the budget of this ad set by 20%. Whatever ad set has the campaign name has this in it. Okay. So that's one way that you can do it. Now, if you wanted to do, this is scale ABO. If you wanted to do a CBO, then you would apply this to, if you want to apply it to a CBO, you do the same thing. You would just change it to all active campaigns, and then it has scale CBO. You're selecting the campaign instead of the ad set level. So what's another example of a rule that you can do? Well, let's say that I have a testing campaign, okay? And if my campaign name contains test, right, then I want to pause an ad if it's spent $200 and the purchases are under 2. Actually, let me look at this one, right? So let's just say my target CPA is $50. And we can talk more about the specifics later when we talk about testing or something like that. But let's just say I booted up a new test ad set, and my CPA is $50. That's my target CPA. And I'm going to give it 3 times my target CPA to see if it gets a purchase. Well, that would be $150. So if I don't have a purchase after $150 in spend, I want you to turn off the ad sets. And here's the conditions. If the ad set lifetime spend, now this is important, you can put spend in here, right? Like one condition is spend, right? Spent. Okay. But the thing is, that is the spend in this time period. So if this was like yesterday, it would look at the amount of spend yesterday. But lifetime spend is the lifetime spend on that ad set, even if this was yesterday, right? So, but let's look at the lifetime spend. If it's greater than 150 and my purchases is less than 1, and the campaign name contains open bracket, test, close bracket, then I want you to go ahead and turn off those ad sets. Then we can create kind of like a waterfall type of scenario where this rule applies if it's $150 and doesn't have purchases. But what if, okay, $200 and it has less than 2 purchases? So what happens is we can have these waterfall type of rules where our standards can kind of tighten up, where now this one, let's say that it gets 1 purchase and $150 to spend. Well, now is it going to get less? Does it going to get $2 purchases and $200 worth of spend? Because if it only had a small amount of spend, then if it had $200 to spend and only had 1 purchase, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and kill it. So it would turn off the ad sets, right? So this is just an example of rules that you could set up. I thought this one, why don't we finish this together? I went ahead and created some of these this morning just as like an example of what we could do. But what if we wanted to create, I'll show you just how we do it. Test, and I like to put that right there if I have something in the ad name, just so I kind of know. We want to pause if the spend is greater than 250 and the purchases are less than 3. This is going to apply to all active. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to apply this to. Oh, I have to create another one. I have to create another one. It won't let me. All right, so we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and delete this rule. And we're going to create another rule. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. Pause if spend is greater than 250, purchases less than 3. So this is going to apply to all active ad sets. And I'm going to say the action is going to be turn off ad sets. And that's going to happen if my lifetime spent is greater than $250, and I can add that in, and my purchases is smaller than 3, right? So in other words, if it only has 2 purchases at $250 in spend, I'm going to turn that off. Okay? And then we need to add one more condition, which is if the campaign name contains test, then this is going to, so this automated rule is going to run if all of these conditions are true. Lifetime spend is greater, if all these conditions are true for this ad set, right? Lifetime spend is greater than 250. There's less than 3 purchases, and the campaign name equals test. I'm looking at just the maximum time range for this because it may take it a week or more to get up to this amount of spend, just depending on how things are going, how you have the spend allocated. And then I could go ahead and create this rule. So there we go. We created the rule and it pops up right there. So that kind of shows you how to create rules and maybe gives you some ideas of what you can do with these rules. Again, I'm really not a heavy user of these automated rules. I've seen them kind of get, nasty if you get something wrong. One thing about, I do like to use these kind of naming kind of codes, but you have to get it right in the name, right? If I have my campaign name, I've done this before where, like, let's say instead of DNU, someone puts parentheses, DNU, close parentheses, then this rule is not going to run, right? It has to be open bracket. And I'm not sure if it's case sensitive or not. It may or may not be. I just do it case sensitive anyway, just to be sure. So let me get to some questions right here. Add condition has name. I think you were talking about that's very creative use. Cool. All right. What if we use ad set name instead of campaign? Yeah, you can do that, right? What I like to do, David asked, and I think like you're talking about these, you could use ad set name. You could put that in the ad set name, but this way it's just easier for me to put it in the campaign, and like every ad set in there is going to be that's my testing campaign, right? So it doesn't matter whether you do it at the ad set level, the campaign level, it's just however you add the names that makes it convenient for you. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and stop this share, and I'm going to go ahead and now we can get going with our main feature for today. All right, so let me go ahead and, I think this is owed by my Gmail instead of my NHP one, but I'll make you guys viewers. I will pop this in the chat. All right, so we're gonna pop that in the chat there if you want to hop in to take a look. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about here today is, let me get this set up. All right, cool. Okay, optimization. So we're going to be optimizing ads, right? We're going to be looking at how do we go about, we've got ads that are running. How do we go about scaling them up, adding budget. What if things aren't doing well? How do we decrease the budget? What's the best way to go about doing that? How to evaluate the frequency? Do we turn off bad ads? Do we not? And as I've hinted before multiple times, best practice on this has kind of changed recently. So we're going to dive into this today, and I think this hopefully will be good. Now, first of all, before we get going on this, I want to kind of explain a concept that I think is pretty important to understand. And that is this idea, right? That ad spend is like weight on the bar for a squat. Okay. And I've used this example before. I've used this analogy before. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with like squatting, or it could be any exercise you do with weight. But let's just say you're squatting. You got some weight, kind of on your shoulders, on your back. You squat down and you come back up. And man, like if you're really strong and it's lightweight for you, you're going to move really fast. Okay. So let's just say there's someone and they're lifting the bar, 45 pounds. I'm in America, so I do 45 pounds. I don't speak kilos, right? But like they do the bar, 45 pounds, and they just squat down, they squat back up. They're looking fast, right? Fast, they're looking strong, just bang, bang, right? So let's put a little more weight on the bar. Maybe take it up to 135. You could take it up to 185, 225, and they're squatting fast. They're squatting fast. They're looking strong. Well, at some point, what's going to happen is as you add weight onto the bar, maybe at 275, they start to slow down a little. Like at 315, maybe they're slowing down a little more. You take it up to 335 and they're really grinding it out, right? As you add weight to the bar, that person squatting is going to slow down and really grind it out. And eventually, if you keep adding weight to the bar, it will get to the point that they can't lift that anymore and they fail that weight. Okay. Now, ad spend is like weight on the bar. The more spend we add to something, that is like adding weight on the bar and makes it, in a sense, tougher. So you may notice that, hey, if we're getting a really good CPA, we're getting really good results. Let's just scale up the budget. You may be able to do that, right? But you might, as you scale up the budget, it might be normal for you to see your CPA, your cost per acquisition, your cost per purchase, for that to get worse because it's like weight on the bar as it's getting heavier. Now, you may have a guy who's super, super, super strong, right? And he can squat 600 pounds like it's nothing. Well, you can add a lot of weight on the bar before it slows down. Likewise, you can have, if you've got an ad set or something like that, you've got some stuff that's really, really, really working, you might be able to increase the budget a lot and it will still do well. But at some point, it's going to slow down. It's going to start failing. And you may have another lifter that 100 pounds is tough for them. Just like you might have an ad set that 100 pounds or a low amount of spend is tough for them. So this is a really good analogy to kind of keep in the back of our mind that ad spend is like adding weight onto the bar when we're squatting. So let's talk about optimization at the ad level and at the ad set level. Okay. Wherever we adjust our budget, the first thing we can do, the first tool we have is to change the budget, right? So if things are doing really well, and let's just say we're running ABO, so our budget's at the ad set level. If things are working really well in that ad set, let's increase the budget. Pretty simple, right? That's going to scale that up, but it's also going to be adding weight to the bar. So you may see your results decline. Now, likewise, let's say something is not doing that good. One of the tools we have is to reduce the weight on the bar, to take the spend off. Let's say an ad set, it's not getting the best results. We can reduce the spend that ad set has, and that may kick it back to where all of a sudden now it's getting good results, right? We're taking weight off the bar and making it simpler for that ad set. So the question is, right, when do we turn off an ad set, or when do we just change the budget, right? And the way I like to think about this, I like to think about this like having an employee. Okay? Now, let's say that we had an employee that was working for us, and they've been working for us for 2 or 3 years, and they are just an amazing dream employee. Amazing employee. but they have a really bad week. Maybe they show up late one day, maybe one day they don't even show up, and like we're kind of like, what's going on? Well, what are we going to do to that employee? We're going to say, hey, like, are you okay? Like, things were great for 2 or 3 years. You're a faithful employee. Everything's wonderful. Like, is everything all right? Is there any way we could help? But what if, on the other hand, we had another employee that it was their first week, and their very first week of being hired, they show up late their first day, and their second day, they don't even show up at all. You're much less inclined to give that employee a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance, right? Because that employee hasn't proven themselves. The employee doesn't have historical performance. So you're more likely to say, hey, I'm sorry, this isn't a good fit to that new employee. So it's the same way, right? If an ad set has, or we'll just say, the ad set ad campaign, we'll kind of use those interchangeably, but if an ad set has really good historical performance, then I'll be adjusting the budget, right? I don't want to just turn it off and fire it. But if an ad set has no historical performance, right? If it's like a new test, then I'm going to, turn it off. If it never got off the ground, then I'm just going to say, all right, not a really good fit. Let's kind of move on, and I'll turn it off, right? Now, adjusting budgets, I like to think of it, as a red light, yellow light, green light situation. Okay. So red light, results are bad, reduced budget. Yellow light equals results are acceptable, but barely. Keep budget the same. Green light equals results are great, increase budget. We're going to scale it up, right? You can also do more refined tiers. So for instance, you could do like really great equals scale aggressively. Good equals scale, I should say, conservatively. Decent equals hold. Bad is descale, which is reduced budget. Conservatively and really bad equals descale aggressively, right? So you can also do those more refined tiers just depending on the variance that you have with your account, right? How detailed you want to break it down and how you want to get. Now, the question is, how do we green light, red light, yellow light, like how do we even evaluate an ad set or a campaign, right? What do we look at? Do we look at ROAS? Do we look at our CPA, our cost per purchase? Do we look at cost per click? Like what factor are we looking at to even determine what's green light, what's yellow light, and what's a red light? Okay. So this depends on a lot of context. All right. We need data. So for instance, let's say we're doing lead gen. Okay. For lead gen, where we're getting a ton of conversions, then we can judge it, pretty quickly based off of our cost per lead, right? But if we're looking at a product with a high CPA, we need, more spend in order to get the data. In that case, maybe we make early calls based off of leading indicators. So I'll give you an example. Like if we have an AC funnel, and let's just say our typical CPA might be $80. If we've launched a new test or something like that, we can say, hey, um, my cost per click is like $40. Like this is horrible. I don't need to wait around and spend $200, 3 times my CPA or something like that in order to judge that. I can cut that off pretty quickly and just say, all right, let me cut that off. Um, and as we get more data, we'll move, further and further down the funnel. So we'll move from, to cost per lead to, CPA, and then we can look at ROAS, right? Looking at ROAS, making decisions off of ROAS, think about it this way. When do we make decisions off of ROAS? And that's return on ad spend, right? So making decisions off of ROAS, we can absolutely do that, but the key is we need data, right? ROAS is basically due to your average order value, your AOV, right? So that if one ad set has a CPA of $50 and a ROAS of 2, and another ad set has a CPA of $50, let's just say CPA of $40 and a ROAS of 1.5, then the difference between them is the AOV. Does that math make sense? Like if I'm acquiring customers, if I'm getting these for cheaper, but yet I have lower ROAS, that's because this ad set right here, the average order value was higher. Okay. Now, a lot of people will say, actually, does everyone understand that math before I move on? Let me know if anyone doesn't, and I can kind of explain it more. But a lot of people will say, do not make decisions off of ROAS. You just need data. So if it's like 1 or 2 purchases, you can't really conclude that the AOV will, reasonably always be that high. So you can't really judge off of ROAS. But if you have, 500 purchases, then you may reasonably conclude that the AOV for that ad set will be at that, close to that number. Right? So it's all about, if we're going to judge off ROAS or CPA or whatever we're going to judge it on, we need to know there's enough data for us to make a decision, right? Don't make a decision on boosting or reducing budgets off of like 1 purchase or 2 purchases, right? We want data that allows us to make decisions. So if we don't have that much data, we need to kind of weigh in with those leading factors if we need to make an early decision, or we just let it get enough spend so that it has enough purchases that we can kind of make a decision about, do we scale up or do we scale it back? All right. So for instance, so if we're doing, high ticket book a call funnels, then we're not going to be evaluating a lot on ROAS, like at the ad level or something, right? Because we need data, and it takes a lot of spend in order to get that data. There are fewer purchases for a book a call funnel. Okay. So, what we'll be doing, that's kind of what we're looking at, right? Now that we kind of what we're looking at, what metrics are we kind of considering? And by the way, I'm generally looking at CPA with a view to also consider ROAS once it has enough data. Okay, that's what I'm kind of looking at. So now that we know what we're looking at, how do we know whether it's green, yellow, red? Well, we need to set targets, right? To determine whether it's green, yellow, red. So you could say my target CPA, or let's say like my max allowable CPA is $80. Then I might say something like, $80 and higher is red. And then like maybe 70 to 80 is yellow. And then under 70 is green. Or this might even be, or you could maybe even take that back to like 65 or 60, something like that, right? Depending on just what you're seeing in terms of the typical spread of your conversions. Okay. So once we've got these targets, we look back at last 7 days, last 3 days, and yesterday with a little bit of today. Okay. Now, this is why I don't like to use a lot of rules, because I like to kind of look back and get an idea of what's happened in the last 7 days, the last 3 days, yesterday. And it's hard to do that with rules. It's hard to have those conditions because let's say, for instance, last 7 days was not great, but last 3 days was strong. And yesterday was amazing. Let's say last 7 days was red. Then in that case, I'm not going to cut, right? If I were only evaluating it based on the last 7 days, I would be thinking, oh, it's in the red. Let me go ahead and cut it. But what the story that this tells me is that, the algo figured something out, right? It's hit a good pocket of optimization. So I don't want to reduce budget, right, during that case, right? Now, that might be one where what I'd probably do is just keep it the same. I probably wouldn't scale it up if my last 7 days were in the red. I'd probably, in this case, I'd probably keep it the same. What if we saw, last 7 days looks decent, but last 3 is really bad, and yesterday was bad. In that case, what the story is, what the data story tells us is that Facebook was doing okay, and maybe it hit, a bad pocket, or the optimization isn't great the last few days. Maybe there's something else going on with, the beginnings of ad fatigue or whatever else. This might be a case where I might consider cutting. What I'd actually do in this case is look back at 14 days and 30 days, right? Is this like the employee that's really good, but just had a couple bad days? If so, then like, because if performance last 30 days is really strong, last 14 days is really strong, last 7 days is pretty decent. Well, in this case, I might give it a little while longer and not cut it. But if the performance over the last 30 wasn't that great, last 14 was okay, but then maybe it had a really good beginning of the week and a bad end of the week, then I might say, all right, like I might consider cutting that. So it's all like looking back at the historical performance and through these different time horizons and saying, what does the data tell us about what does the data tell us about the story of this ad? Is it generally a really, really good ad that's had a bad day or two? Or is it generally a meh ad that had a good day, a couple good days at the beginning of last week, right? Once we know that, that can determine how we kind of move forward from there. Okay. Now, one thing too, a lot of this is based off of business context, and business situations. So like uh, a lot of people will say you need to have these metrics in place and you don't want to make decisions emotionally. And I agree with that, but I also think that sometimes there's more than just the metrics inside of Ads Manager. I really pride myself, and I think I've talked about this with you guys maybe, but I pride myself on I'm here to serve my client's business, not the other way around, right? I'm not here to say, here are my automated rules and here's the standards I use and you have to do this. I have expertise and I hope to give them that expertise and help steer them a particular direction. But ultimately, I'm here to serve them, not the other way around. So sometimes there are extenuating circumstances that may affect what's going on. So I have one client, you know, I have one client, all they care about is ROAS. They'd rather spend $1,000 a day with a 3 ROAS than spend $10,000 a day with a 2 ROAS. Even though you can do the math and say it'd be a lot more money spending a $10,000 a day with a 2 ROAS, but that's just how they are, right? That's how they think. And I don't actually talk directly to that client. I'm working with a kind of CMO publisher who deals with them, but that's it. That's fine. So I'm okay with that. So in that case, I'm going to make my decisions based off of a really strict idea of getting to this 3 ROAS, right? I have other clients that just care about max profit, right? It doesn't matter the ROAS, it's the money in the bank, which is the way probably most clients are. So I'm making business decisions about what I cut and what I don't. That factors into it, right? Sometimes I, had a client who produced videos. They hired, can't type. They hired a big agency. It wasn't the Harmon Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with the Harmon Brothers. It wasn't the Harmon Brothers, but it was an agency like theirs. And they paid a ton of money to produce these videos. And I saw them and I was actually very optimistic because they looked like they would be some strong performing videos. Well, that to me, I'm going to spend a lot of time testing those. I'm much less inclined to just let me turn those off. Let me reduce the budget on that, right? I'm much more inclined to make sure that I'm giving as much spend to this as possible, as much testing budget to this as possible, so that I can go to them and say, hey, I gave this every shot to succeed, and here are the results. If I go to them and I'm like, yeah, I spent $10 on it and we didn't get that's not going to work, right? That's not going to fly. Other so I've had other clients that they filmed the videos themselves, like they were in the video and they just were like really convinced that it would be great. So I need to give adequate budget to that in order to make sure that I can go to them with the data and say, hey, I gave your creatives every chance to succeed and it didn't do well, right? So there's all the time, there are extenuating circumstances so that sometimes you're looking for reasons to keep those ads going. And sometimes you're looking for reasons to turn those ads off. If I have a client that is really primed for ROAS, that's what they care about. I am looking for a reason to turn that ad off. And I've got tons of creative, right? This is the one account. I've got tons of creative. I've got tons of assets going, and they really care about ROAS. So I have a very, very, very short leash. I have a very low tolerance for creative that isn't crushing. So I'm much more inclined, turn off, turn off, turn off, reduce budget. But on the other hand, what if I didn't have a lot of creative? Well, then I might need to say, okay, um, I need to give this some more. Like if I had a lot of creative, and a lot of audiences that are producing, you know, I'm much more inclined to cut things and reduce because I've got that much more assets, right? If I don't have a lot of replacement assets, I'm much more wary, right? I've got to think, hey, this might not be an ad that is absolutely crushing, but I think it's the best ad I have, and I don't really have a lot more we're working. So you got to deal with the best you can at the time. Sometimes I'm working with clients where there's also all sorts of extenuating circumstances. I'm working with a client that it's a book a call funnel, and they've got closers that their closers schedules have to be filled up. So I have to manage, like, I can't just reduce the ad spend back to hardly anything. Even if my ROAS goes really high, even if my efficiency is really great, I can't reduce it back because they've got a team that depends on those full calendars. Whereas other people, like, they don't care. It's a digital ebook they're sending you. Like, we just care about that, the money. Like, you could drop that back. So anyway, the point is there's all the time a lot of extenuating circumstances for you to think about. But some accounts, I'm looking for every reason to turn the ads on, every reason to leave them on, and some accounts, I'm looking for reasons to turn them off. Right? I'm really skeptical. I have really high standards, or I'm a little more lax. All right. So the question now is, how much do you adjust your budget by? Okay. How much should you adjust your budget by? 10%, some would say, and that's good. 20%. I think a lot of times it depends on a few factors. So for instance, the more margin you have is the greater adjustment, the more weight on the bar that you can add. So for instance, right, like if my target CPA is $50 and I have an ad set that is producing purchases at $20, I've got a lot of margin. I've got a lot of reason. I've got a lot of uh, extra margin to go ahead and say, like, let me put a bunch of weight on the bar. If, on the other hand, my target CPA is $50 and I'm close to like $42, I might be thinking, ooh, maybe I want to hold, or maybe if I do scale up, I do it like 5%. I do it like 10%, a little bit, right? How much margin do you have until you get close to your CPA? Another is, the smaller the budget relative to the audience, the more adjustment that you can make. So for instance, if you have, $100 budget, you can probably go to $200 without much of an issue, right? If this is a new or a standard account, an old account that is really well dialed in, that it's had lots of spend, it's not a brand new account, and that it's had high spend before, it can probably take a lot of spend. You may be okay to say, hey, this $100 ad set, we got a lot of margin, it's only $100, bang, let me just double it. Let me just crank it up. You'd be all right. Whereas, if I were spending, $5,000 a day in a relatively small audience, I might only boost by, 10% or something like that. And that's if I have a lot of margin, or, 5% or less if I don't have a lot of margin. So a lot of these factors are determining, how much we adjust the budget by, which is, again, why, going back to the automated rules, I gave you guys those as examples, but that is, I don't do it a lot because there's just so many factors involved, like the factors that I've just been telling you about. Like, if it is $100, I might just pop it up to 200. If it is 150, I might pop it up to 250. But if it's 500, I might increase it to 600. I might do 20%. If it's 5,000, I might not go 20%. I might only go up to 5,500 or something like that. So all of these, there's context that needs to be considered in a lot of these decisions. So how often should you adjust budget? Generally, if you're not in a hurry, every 2 or 3 days. As a result, hold up. Now, again, this is contextual, like anything else. I've worked with clients, who are doing live launches, live sales, where there were live promos. I went quick, right? Like, if you had, I think it was like a live webinar or something like that, you only had a couple days to get sales, like a 7-day sales cycle, and we want to be aggressive. If I've got some tests that I launched and they're doing really well, I'm going to scale them up. I might scale those up 20%. I've done this 20% like 2 or 3 times a day, right? Because it's like, time is not on my side, right? I don't have time to boost it slowly and wait 2 or 3 days. I got to go, 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 go. Facebook generally, I think you can probably increase it more than many think. Years ago, I don't know, this months ago, years ago, the timing, it all runs together in my mind. Facebook had this feature and they only had it for like a couple weeks and then it went away. But it would show you whenever you went to increase a budget, it would say something like, you can increase your budget up to this amount without resetting the learning. And it was always a much higher number than people anticipated. It was like not 20%, it was like doubling it, increasing it like 80%. It was big, big, big swings. So I think that, and again, they took that away because maybe people did it and their results tanked. I'm not 100% sure. You can probably increase it by more than many may think, but still, again, like, are you in a hurry? Right? Like it goes back to this context. Some clients are go, go, go. And I have had clients tell me like, we want to go, we want to make a mess, we want to get data back, we want to optimize. So like they're comfortable scaling up quickly, even if it's not immediately profitable, because their objective is to optimize the system to give them that long-term success, to verify an offer as quickly as possible. Other clients are much more like, hey, I've got to have cash flow. I got to pay my bills. I'm really concerned about revenue, profit, money in the bank. So, and I don't care if it takes me weeks or months, like I can't go bankrupt. So some clients are much more conservative. And that's why a lot of these decisions are very, very, very contextual. So one thing is the more data you get equals more frequent adjustments. So if you're doing like lead generation and you're getting like 100 leads a day, then Facebook can be able to optimize off of that pretty quickly. You could probably increase it 20%. And if the results hold, 20% the next day, and if the results hold 20% the next day, right? If they're acceptable, because you're getting in so much data that you're getting a quick signal on whether or not that budget increase threw things off or not. But if you're getting 5 purchases in that ad set, you increase the budget 20%, you might want to wait around to see if it stabilizes. So the more data you're getting allows you to get signal. I should say that, like, more data equals quicker signal on the effects of your changes, which means more frequent adjustments are possible. All right. You've also got to consider purchase cycles. So I have a client that is a telemedicine client, and what they do is they basically have prescription medications, right? They're online doctors basically, where you can go, you can fill out a form, their doctors will issue you prescriptions, and then you can get them at your local pharmacy or they'll ship them to you, right? Well, what they do is they do not charge you, even though we're optimizing for purchase and that's what we're going for. We do not optimize. A purchase does not fire until the doctor approves them for the medication. And that may be a day, 2, 3 days after they've clicked on the ad. So in that case, if I were to make a big budget adjustment, I might need to wait several days, a week, before evaluating, okay, what were the effects of what I just did? Because there may be that kind of delayed purchase cycle. If it's a webinar funnel and the typical pattern is people watch the webinar and then maybe they think about it for 2 or 3 days and you get purchases within, 3 days or something like that, then you might need to make adjustments and wait for that kind of cohort to come back to give you an idea of whether or not that is a good thing. Okay. All right. Now, I'm looking at my notes here. Okay. So what this means is that scaling day to day and optimization day to day is a lot of what I'm doing is you're just writing your budgets up and down. And I do this independently, right? So everywhere, like if I've got ABO or I've got CBO, anywhere that I can adjust budgets, I'm treating all of those assets independently. So I'm going to raise the budgets on the ad sets. I'm going to lower the budgets on the ad sets or the CBO campaigns. If it's doing well, if it's green light, I'm going to scale it up. If it's yellow light, I'm going to hold it. If it's red light, I'm going to reduce it back. And that's what I'm doing pretty much on a every couple day basis when I check in. And the exact frequency that you do that is dependent on kind of a lot of factors that we've talked about there. But what I'm generally doing is either like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of time frame, or like a Monday, Thursday time frame, or something like that every couple days where I'm getting in. And sometimes it's based on other schedules, like if we're launching on a particular day, or sometimes client meetings. Like I'm working with a CMO publisher and they're going to go meet with a client. So we want to have make sure we make certain adjustments so that they can go to the client and they can say, here's what's done or whatever. There's all sorts of reasons, but that's generally what the day-to-day is just writing those budgets up and down. Now, the question is, we've talked about adjusting budgets, but what about ads? What about turning them on and off? Because you can't adjust the budget of an individual ad, right? If you got an ad set, Facebook is the one that determines what ads in that ad set get to spend. So what do we do there? We'll talk about it in a moment. Give you that teaser, that spoiler. But just before that, let me go ahead and get these chat questions. All right. Oh, thank you, Robbie. Posting. Okay. Everyone's posting these. Great. Thank you, Ravi. How do you come up with your target CPA if you don't consider ROAS that much? That's a good idea. So I should tell you, I mean, I do consider ROAS from like a business standpoint. What I'm talking about is when I'm evaluating an individual ad set or an individual ad, if there's only 2 or 3 purchases, I'm not really looking too hard into the ROAS to determine whether or not I scale that or not, or descale it, right? I'm looking more at my CPA. I do look at ROAS from an account level perspective, right? Once I have a lot of data to be like, okay, what is overall, what's my general AOV? Then I absolutely am looking at ROAS to then determine what my CPA, what my cost per purchase will be. How do you, so Idan asks, how do you come up with your target CPA? A lot of times that is in talks with a client, which is like, what is your, what's your cash flow? Like what CPA works for their business reasons, right? And this is, some people are really comfortable going into the red in order to spend more to get those customers. Other people need that return on ad spend up front. They need that cash flow. So it's always a discussion with the client. If I were doing it on my own, it would be the same type of idea. How comfortable am I going into the red? It would be looking at what is my average order value, my average return on ad spend based on kind of that average order value, and extrapolating from there. For me, like I've worked with businesses before, businesses that I was a part of. I mean, it was me and a friend and I, we had a little online fitness business, and we were looking at day one cash flow. We were not going into the red. Why? Because cash flow was an issue for us. We didn't have a lot of cash flow. If we had been smarter, if I'd have known then what I know now, we could have been a lot smarter. But this was, gosh, 7, 8 years ago. And we were dumb. Man, if I'd have known then what I know now, we could have made so much money. But yeah, so we were concerned about cash flow. So that could be it. Now, Chris asks, so for high ticket book a call, if we have a low ad spend, limited data, we'd go downstream to something like cost per click and do the green, yellow, red, and look at 1, 3, 7 on rolling day windows. Yeah, so you could. Typically with book a call, here's the way I would approach it, is I would at least try to get, I wouldn't look at cost per click per se. I would say, what are some other intermediate events that we could look at? Like, could we look at cost per lead? Like if you book for a webinar that then takes you to the book a call. Could we look at, instead of, purchases for its high ticket purchase, what do we look at booked calls or booked quality calls? What signals could we have in that funnel that would still give us some insight? And then generally I might make a call to cut if on cost per click, if it's really bad, right? And I'm not making a call like if my average cost per click is $1.80 and I have one that's $1.90, I'm not going to like cut that. I'm not going to be like, let's throw this out. But if my average cost per click is $1.80 and I have one that's $20 cost per click, I might go ahead and say, yeah, like I don't need to like continue running a ton of spend to this. Like this isn't working. I actually, what I might do is just duplicate it right at that point. Or you could let it run and maybe give it a little more. But generally, a lot of this depends on the economics of the client about how much they can stand a testing budget that could potentially be inefficient. A lot of people, they're high spending clients where they can stand to spend some money and maybe it produces, maybe it doesn't. My book a call client that I'm working with, I'm generally evaluating it on cost per calls and ROAS, but it's kind of like I'm looking at ROAS in the long term and I'm looking at cost per call and cost per quality call in kind of the intermediate term. And I would be comfortable with this client. They're comfortable spending enough money, spending several $100s. We probably run about $100 a day for these testing ad sets for like a week. So probably spending about $700 before we evaluate the effects of that ad set. And we should pretty much know at that point, okay, our cost per call, you know, it shouldn't be $700. So we can kind of get an idea of where we're at. So hopefully that answers your question. It's always a balancing act with these things. All right, Ravi, what's up, my man?
Hey, Lauren, amazing call.
Oh,
You
thank you,
blow my
thank
mind
you.
always. Every time, it's so much new perspectives comes into it. That's what is a hypothetical,
Oh, we're
curious
about
question.
we're about halfway done, so just wait for the rest of the call too. Yeah, go ahead. What was your
yeah.
question?
Now, basically, like so so much of things, at this point in the consideration, an offer has been created, a product has been developed, they have the sales page written, they have written the ad or something like that. That's the point. Maybe they come to, hey, Lauren, we need to run all these things. But there is so many things in these factors, like, whether it is a book a call funnel, depending on the sales cycle, everything depends really go upstream to the creation of the product itself,
Mm,
right? You know what I'm saying? So the curiosity which blew my mind was like, like is all these things need to be considered a product to be good, a long-term product, which sales cycles we are going, which all these things can make it a better product, like are we all looking like a 2 months down the line and saying, oh, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, all these things, you know what I'm saying? Let's
mhm,
say if you create an offer based on all the things and your experience, all it would be a completely different product than somebody who create that same product and the same offer without considering any of these things. Does
mm.
it make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those signals, it becomes like almost there's a little bit of an art to it and not just a science.
Yeah.
Considering these signals, and I think that is particularly when we talk about newer offers, because it sounds like you're kind of
Yeah.
hinting at that particular application. Those are very
Yeah.
challenging, where a lot of times looking at these early signals can help you diagnose what's wrong, so you don't have to spend a ton of money if you're experienced. And if you have, this is what NHB is here for, to help you with that, right? To say like,
Mhm.
all right,
Yeah.
looking at these early signals, here's your areas of opportunity here, here's this, and yeah, absolutely could set you up for success. So great comment, Ravi.
Yeah, I was like, it blew my mind. Oh my God, you're like, we may not be looking the whole picture in the beginning. They like, it's a whole bunch of things, and we are funneled into this bottleneck area where, like, now you got to make a decision whether you're on a book a call, whether you're going for the sales cycles, whether you're going for this upstream, downstream, how much is the spend, what really, like, if I don't know, it may be too far-fetched, like, a $20 increase in the budget ad spend, like, how do you do it? May be a completely different offer than $40 increase in the budget,
Hmm.
upstream. It could be. I
Yeah.
may be stretching it too much, but it
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's lots of things to consider, and that's why I always tell people like, in that one call I had, kind of my campaign structure that I use, and I
Yeah,
use
yeah,
as a template for a lot. But if you looked at my different accounts,
yeah,
you would find like there might not be a lot of similarities between a lot of them, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
responding to the different offers.
yeah,
I'm a sucker for variety, right? So like when clients come to me and they're like, I've got this weird funnel that no one, I'm like, I want to do that, right? So like
yeah,
I because of the funnel, because of the offer, their business. I mean, all these different factors. There's subtle differences and sometimes major differences
Yeah.
between the way we run these different accounts. So great point, Ravi. Great
Amazing.
point. Thank you, Ravi. Edan, we got Edan and Rob and Chris, and then we'll hop back into the rest of the call here.
Hey, so how many impressions do you need before you determine anything about your ad? And when you have it, do you determine it based on CPC? And the reason I'm asking it that way specifically is because I've run a new ad set with like 15 ads in it, and I have one ad that had $7 spent, but no click, 150 impressions in it. It's like another ads got more impressions, of course, and clicks
Yeah.
and purchases, but this one didn't work well. And the common sense, I think, is like waiting for 500 impressions, but I wasn't sure because I didn't even get one click there. So
Yeah, that's a good question. That's actually what we're going to talk about next. So it'll be great. We're talking about, the ad level stuff, but kind of for your particular example, I wouldn't do anything. I would leave it on and I would let Facebook continue to decide what to do with that one. So Facebook may say, "Hey, this ad stinks. Let's just stop serving it." And the problem takes care of itself, Um, I only generally turn off ads if they have a lot of spend and they've proven to be bad, right?
oh,
If it doesn't have enough spend, I'm going to leave it on,
so do you
right?
measure it by spend or by impressions or
Well,
like?
both because they're related, but generally, spend relative to the results I would expect, right? So if you said it was 150 impressions, so it's probably spent you said $7.
Yeah.
Yep, that should be the type where I would let it run. I wouldn't turn it off. Um, Facebook would, because you've got multiple ads in that ad set. As long as the ad set as a whole is working and there are other ads in there, I would just leave it on and let Facebook figure it out. If it were to get to the point where it had $100 to spend on it, then we could sit and we could say, do we turn that on or off? When do we turn that on? And that's exactly what we'll talk about here in a minute.
I see. So it's only when the spend is significant and not like you're not looking at the impressions that much, I believe.
Yeah, generally. I mean, because the idea is you want to give it a fair shot, right? And even if the results now, if everything in the ad set was bad, or if it was the only ad in an ad set, then I might feel different,
Mhm.
right? Then I might say, okay, we spent $7, we didn't even get a click. Let me duplicate this, give it another shot, right? But if you've got multiple ads in that ad set, I just let it run.
Yeah, got you.
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Rob, what is up?
What's up, champ? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I woke up this morning, so I can't complain.
That's
So
good,
I just
man.
I got
Hey, I
a
like your
quick
shelves. Look at your shelves. You got the same shelves as me.
oh yeah, Amazon for the
There
win.
you go. There you go. Classic. You got some style. I love that. I love that.
Yes, sir. I just got a quick question. So I've been wrestling with not wrestling, but just not running ads, basically. Just kind of like, okay, this organic thing is cool, it's wonderful, but it's inconsistent. So
Mm.
I dropped a question allowing you actually responded to it because I found an agency to work with. And I just had
Yeah.
a couple questions, kind of like what can I do on my end to make sure it's successful, to make sure that it's good. Not saying like I would like jump into Ads Manager and turn
Mhm.
stuff on, turn stuff off, but like outside of whatever they say to do. What should I be doing or like red flags, just kind of like best practices. I don't know if you was gonna jump into that. So if so, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
kind of looking for some advice.
So yeah, some best practices on how to relate to an agency.
Or just how to work with them. So all right, so I got
Yeah.
an agency. Another thing is just kind of like I'm not used to the amount. So it's like it's 4,500 to manage everything. They're doing a lot though. They're doing Facebook, they're doing YouTube, they're helping me with the funnel. and also the creatives. They're creating the creatives for me as well.
Cool, cool, cool.
And I think they said they want the ad spend to be like 150 or $200 a day. So, and the product is 297 a
Okay.
month.
Yeah, I think so the if the goal is like how can I set them up for success, right? It's kind of what you're
Right.
asking.
Hmm.
I think I would let them know, here are assets I have that may be helpful. Here's images I have, here's videos that I have. Here's what I know about my audience. Here's what I know about this offer. All that type stuff is good to kind of give them. And then feel free to ask questions. Feel free to kick around ideas of them. I think every agency is a little different in how they like to work, just like every
Okay.
client is different in how they like to work. But I think that generally the best way to set them up for success would be not to micromanage them and
Right.
not to get in there and question necessarily everything they do in the sense of a challenge. I do think it's okay to question if you're upfront, like, hey, I just want to learn. I
Yeah.
don't understand this and I want to get better. And honestly, what I would do is I would ask them, what can I do to help you? I think if a
Okay.
client asked me that, I would feel very honored and flattered and would take that as a great sign of a great relationship. And I would be very upfront with them. Hey, thank you for letting me know, Mr. Client. Here's what you can do, right? If you could do this and this and this, and let them know, hey, I got an open door. Anything you need, just let me know. You need this films, you need pictures of this. That's the type of stuff that'll be helpful.
Sounds good. All right. I was just wondering just to make sure to make it good, but that was it because like Robbie said, you were on a pretty good roll, so I don't want to mess it up.
No, no, no. It's all good. It's all good. All good,
I
man.
appreciate you.
Cool, man. Cool, man. Yeah, and I'll get into the rest of the call here in a minute, and we can do more questions at the end too. So you get any more, Chris? What's up?
Hey man, I just
How
had
you
like a
doing?
quick question. I'm doing good, man. How about you?
Good, good, good.
I just had a quick follow-up question. I guess so, and I can put this in the lounge too, but like and so instead of like a cost per click, like a better signal would be like a dollar per like 3 minute watched video for like a VSL type thing. Is that like what you're thinking like in terms of like quality of signals? If I'm trying to like call ad set a little bit earlier versus just like a cost per book call. So if I had like a $300 threshold versus trying to see which one may flop right out of the gate if I'm like testing different copy and whatnot.
Yeah, what's
Chris,
the funnel?
massive favor here and exactly answer that question.
Uh,
He's running a video ad learn for a finance offer, very solution aware audience, pretty good lead on us, and has high consumption on his lander. We have a big drop off, but I think but it gets very, very stable for the people who stay. And I think that probably some of the video view data he has is just poisoned from the testing and looking at it type stuff based on his volume. So I think, Chris, you're thinking probably along the right lines, of thinking in terms of like video watch time, either on landing page if you can track that somehow, or just time on landing page would be
Yep.
my insights. But that's the funnel. It's like straight to just VSL
Yeah, so
book call.
there's no opt-in. Okay,
It's
so straight
Yeah, it's
straight from
ungated.
straight from
Yep.
an ad to you watch a video, and then after the video you book a call.
button underneath over to Calendly link is
Yeah.
the current structure.
What
Yeah.
I would do is I would try to fire an event you can do this with Google Tag Manager. You can work some Google Tag Manager magic. You could fire an event, say 3 minutes in, or pick your poison, right? Any particular time into that VSL. How long is the VSL?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Yeah. Is there like when does the CTA pop up?
Right now it's there the whole time, and then it's just got like a real short close in the last minute. So minute 14, I
Okay.
go into.
So, all right. So like if the close is like at the 13 and a half minute mark, you could fire at like the 3 minute mark, at the 8 minute mark, and the 3.5 minute mark. Right. And I just made those up. You could do whatever. You could fire it every 5 seconds. It wouldn't matter. But I would probably fire it a couple events in there with some Google Tag Manager. You can fire that Facebook, fire some custom events, get that back into Facebook that way. Then once they go over to your calendar, sometimes Calendly is difficult, but if you can set it up where visiting your calendar page is an event, right? So we just set up like what events can we bring in
Okay.
are for these different points, and then that gives you options to work with. So you could look and see, hey, man, this 3 minute video view watch is so atrocious. I'm going to go ahead and just kill that, right? If and it I would kill it. Like the earlier signal you choose, the worse it has to be. Right. So
Okay.
if you're calling it off a 3-minute watch, I wouldn't make a decision off of like 5%. You know, it's close. Like, no, I would do it if it was horrendous. The
Okay.
closer the further signal it is, the closer then you can get to the pickier you can be in terms of how far they deviate from that standard. But if you're
Yep.
choosing an early event like that minute watch or 3-minute watch or whatever it is, I would only cut it if it were really, really, really bad.
Right, because you have less data, right? So that's the thinking behind that, essentially.
Yeah, and there's, it could be that um what's the correlation, right? Is the correlation between a cost per click and a high ticket purchase is not 100%, right?
Yep.
Otherwise, we could make a fail-proof decision off of cost per click alone. But because the further you go down, the earlier it is in the funnel, the less correlation there is between your ultimate desired event, which would be a high ticket purchase, and that lower funnel event, which is why you need more data in order to give you more confidence. That's why you're typically waiting for those later funnel events, because there's a higher correlation. There's a much higher correlation between a booked call and a high ticket purchase than there is between a click and a high ticket purchase.
Yep.
Right. So that's why, because of the randomness in that correlation, is why we need to get more data, and then we can make a call based off of just if it's really horrendous from what we're expecting. So cool.
Got it. That's super helpful. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let me dive into the rest of this call. This is when we're going to get to the good stuff. We're going to get into some geeky theory. I should get to this at the beginning, the fun geeky theory stuff. But let me get back into this here. Okay. And make sure. All right, perfect. Okay. So what do we do? We've talked about what to do at the campaign level and the ad set level, where you have your budgets, how you can adjust budgets, reduce budgets, and everything else. But what if it's a place where you can't control budget, like Don's example, right? Like, what if it's ads inside of an ad set? I cannot go in there to those ads inside that ad set and tell Facebook where to spend that budget, where to allocate that budget. Facebook is doing it. I can't take weight off and on, put weight on the bar or take weight off the bar for those ads. All I can do, the only tool I really have, is to turn it on and turn it off, right? So what do I do? How do I then use that to optimize? Well, first of all, we need to consider the breakdown effect, okay? I've talked about this before when I've used my lifter analogy. Let me do this. I hate that page break. Okay. Let me talk about the breakdown effect. Now, you may see something like this. You may see, I've got an ad set, just for the sake of round numbers. It's got $1,000 a day in spend. And I look at ad one, it has $600 in spend. It has a CPA of $24. Ad two has $250 in spend and a CPA of $27. Ad three has $150 in spend and a CPA of $20, right? So the question is, why in the world is this CPA is great? What is Facebook doing? Why is Facebook being stupid and only putting $150? When I break down the data, right? That's where the breakdown effect comes from, because when you break down the data through these different ads, when I really break it down and I look at it per ad, why in the world is Facebook distributing all the budget there? And why do these two get $850 in spend when this one had the best CPA? Well, what we need to do is we need to go back to that lifter analogy. Okay, so let's say, all right, let me get copy paste here. Imagine that you are a coach and you're assigned with having a group of lifters collectively lift 1,000 pounds. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to take the stronger people, like, hey, this professional power lifter over here who weighs like 300 pounds, we're going to give him a lot of weight. We're going to give him 500, 600 pounds. This slight, slim grandmother over here who doesn't look that strong, we're going to give her maybe 50 pounds, right? You're going to give the weaker people less weight, and the stronger people, you're going to give more weight, right? That's how you're going to distribute these 1,000 pounds to this group of lifters so they can collectively lift 1,000 pounds. Now, what if all of a sudden we're looking at them lift, and you've got this power lifter who, man, he's doing 500 pounds, and he's kind of grinding it out, right? Let's say he's a high schooler, right? Because 500, let's say he's a strong high schooler, 500 pounds, he's just grinding it out, bang. So he lifted it, but man, he was moving slow. It really looked tough. Well, then guess what? This little old lady over here, you only gave her 50 pounds and she's squatting fast. She's bang, bang up. Well, why did we do that? Why did we she's moving so fast. Why don't we just take all the weight off of everyone and give it to her? Right? Well, we would never do that. It's the same analogy with the way that Facebook works. We would never even though this little old lady's moving fast with 50 pounds, we would never take 1,000 pounds and put that on her shoulders, because the way she performed with 50 does not necessarily mean she's going to perform the same way with 1,000 pounds, right? It's the same way with Facebook distributing spend, okay? So this 150 in spend with a CPA of $20, if we were to turn these off, I can pretty much guarantee you that's not going to stay $20. As a matter of fact, it'd probably jump up to $30, $35, $40, and we would realize, oh, that's why Facebook gave the spend to these ads, okay? So that is what the breakdown effect is. So when you're looking and you're saying, I've got this ad that's got really good results, but it doesn't have a lot of spend, just remember that breakdown effect. Now, what Facebook is doing, Facebook is distributing spend based on the ads that it thinks will get you results. It's distributing the weight based on the ads that it thinks can lift the most, that can move the most weight on the bar. So generally, here's the way I like to do it, right? On an ad level, if an ad is doing better than my target, I'm leaving it on at the ad level. So if my CPA is, let's say my target CPA is $50, if my ad is getting me better than $50, I'm going to leave it on at the ad level. I'm not going to turn it, even if another ad has a $30 CPA, I'm not going to turn it off, because it's still good. It's still my target, right? It's still getting me acceptable results. What I may do, to go back to what we talked about earlier, I may reduce budget at the ad set level. I may increase budget at the ad set level. Like, I'm going to make decisions at the ad set level about increasing or decreasing budget. But in terms of what I can control on the ad level, all I can control, is it on or is it off? I'm going to leave it on. All right. I'm going to leave it on at the ad level. But the question is, what if it's worse than my target? What if I've got an ad on and my target CPA is $50 and it is getting me $60 CPA, a $70 CPA? And what if Facebook is giving tons of spend to that ad? What if it looked like this, right? What if $600 in spend, and instead of 24, it had 54? Well, do I turn it off then? Okay. Well, let me give you an example. All right. If I have a scaling campaign, and I've had stuff like this happen before. Let's just say my target CPA is $50. I have one ad that's getting 90% of the spend, and it's getting like a $49 CPA. Would I turn it off? No, I typically wouldn't. Okay. As I've talked about before, right? Okay. One ad's getting 90% of the spend, it's getting $49 CPA. I'd probably leave it on because it's getting below my target. But what if it's getting a $52 CPA or a $60 CPA? When do you turn it off? Should you even turn it off to begin with? This is the question. Now, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. Many people say, as long as an ad set as a whole is working, don't turn off any ads. Don't turn off any ads at an ad set level. Well, what should we do? Is that best practice? Is it not? And the people saying that, these are media buyers I respect, okay? I disagree with it a little, what we'll get to. To answer this question, we first need to understand why an ad is getting spend in the first place. This is the key. We need to understand why an ad is getting spent, because if we understand why an ad is getting spent, we understand why Facebook thinks it can lift a lot of weight on that bar, then that can help determine our next steps, because there's actually multiple reasons that Facebook could give spend to an ad. Okay. So why does Facebook think that an ad is worthy of spend? Well, one reason is early signals and engagement, things like this. When you first launch an ad, particularly if it's, you were talking, Chris, about like a book a call funnel, they may not be able to tell which one is, they don't have enough results to be able to say, oh yeah, this one's going to get booked calls, right? Because the ad just started. They don't really know, hey, so once an ad has had 100 purchases, Facebook has data and it can say, okay, I know how good this ad is because it got 100 purchases at this level, at this cost per purchase. But when you just launch an ad before it even has a purchase, or when it only has one or two, Facebook can't make a decision based off your cost per purchase. So Facebook is going to look at early signals. Now, Facebook is really, really, really smart at this, and they've got a lot of signals to look at. They can look at your clicks, right? They can look at who clicked on the see more to read your ad. They can look at who clicked on your ad. They can look at who went over to your landing page. Not only that, those are just the metrics that we can kind of see. They know tons of other stuff that they're not telling us. Like, for instance, if you were to hover over something and pause on it, like if you're scrolling and all of a sudden you stop, like that sends a signal to Facebook. Ooh, that might be interesting. If you watch a video, of course, we do know these metrics, but watching videos, all of these early signals, engaging with an ad, even if you're reading an ad and you spend, some time reading that ad, a couple seconds, 10, 15 seconds, Facebook, I believe, and many other people believe as well, they can tell what time you're spending on something, and they take that as a signal. Well, what they can do is they can say, hey, this ad, there's 10 ads in this ad set. And this one ad right here is getting really good signal in terms of people reading it. Really good signals in terms of people engaging with it, liking the ad, clicking it, right? It doesn't mean that it's got any results, but Facebook is taking a look at all of these early signals to determine if we've got ads in an ad set, which place does it go? Now, another way that Facebook can determine which ad in an ad set gets spend is you can look at the results, right? Right? Generally your CPA. Once you actually start to get what you're optimizing for, Facebook can see that and can say, okay, clearly this ad is getting results. Let's continue with that. And a third one, and this is something that a lot of people don't think about. This might even be kind of, I'll put this as two. I'll talk about ad sequencing and then awareness diversification. These are kind of, people have talked about ad sequencing. This is kind of my term right here, awareness diversification. But think about it this way. I had an example. Let me give you an example. Okay. This is a real life example. I had an account I was running. We were spending, we got up to like $10,000 a day. We had our scaling campaigns, one of our scaling campaigns. Several thousand a day in spend. Okay. I would say 90% of spend was, well, maybe 80 to 90%. 80 to 90% of spend was going to one video ad, right? This video ad had a really low frequency, and it didn't have the best results. It was acceptable, but it wasn't great. And there were plenty of other ads in that scaling campaign that had a way better CPA, tremendously better CPA. And so I can remember looking at this, and part of you thinks, well, this is frustrating. Why doesn't Facebook give more spend to these ads that are doing better? But what really cued to me what was going on was that it had a really low frequency. When you've got a high spend and a low frequency, what's going on is Facebook knows this concept of ad sequencing. Facebook knows what leads to a purchase. It might not just be one ad. It could be that they're watching the video, and then a little while later, Facebook is going to serve them another ad. Maybe it serves them an image ad that says, hey, you can get a discount, or hey, here's a testimonial, or something like that, right? It serves them an image ad, and then they end up clicking and converting. Well, Facebook can figure it out and say, you know what? We think, even though technically, because they clicked on that ad, that last ad, they clicked on the image ad and they purchased from that, that's going to get all the attribution in Ads Manager. So from when we're looking at that, we're just going to see that that ad is responsible for everything. But Facebook knows that video ad brought that person into our ecosystem. That video ad got in front of them and initiated the sales process. And it was merely just that closing ad that sealed the deal and takes the attribution in Ads Manager for it. Facebook sees that. Facebook knows that. So a lot of times you may see Facebook is giving spend based on ad sequencing. It may give a lot of spend to videos and assets that kind of get people in when you talk about top of funnel, right? We were talking earlier about top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Facebook can just has the data to know, and they can connect all the dots and all the ad sequencing and know who's clicking here. I mean, they've just got millions and millions and millions of data points, and they can connect all of them and know that this video ad is bringing people in and the other ads are closing the deal. So that's why Facebook is saying, hey, I'm going to give it 89% of the spend, because I know this video is responsible for everything else being lifted down the line. Now, if I were to go in there and I were to say, you know what, this video is getting all the spend and it's not that great a CPA, and I were to turn that off, what do you think would happen? Well, in that case, if I were to do that, I didn't do that. But if I were to do that, I would expect my results would be okay for a day or two or three, but pretty quickly after that, they would drop off pretty precipitously, because that ad was doing a lot to bring people into the ecosystem, and it's no longer bringing them in. So what you'll see is the power of the sequencing. You'll have a lot of these bottom of funnel type ads that appear better than they are, because they're benefiting from these top of funnel ads that brought them into the ecosystem. So sometimes you've got to evaluate these ads with that in mind. Now, another thing is sometimes an ad can get spend because what I think of as awareness diversification. Now, let's say I'm selling something like, well, I'll talk about one of my clients. I don't think they'd mind me using this as an example. Most of you guys may know this. You may not know this. I'm curious to see, just because I didn't know this. A lot of people have heard of beta blockers, right? Maybe you've heard of beta blockers. They're a prescription that helps with high blood pressure and stuff like that. You can actually take beta blockers in a very, very small dose. You can take them as needed before like a big presentation. So if you're like nervous, you have stage anxiety, you have a fear of public speaking, and you're getting ready to give a big speech, or you're getting ready to do something important like a job interview, or maybe you're taking like a major test or something like that, you can take a beta blocker, and you can take a very low dose of that. And what it does is it actually blocks your adrenaline so that you'll be calm and collected, and in just a very minor dose, right? It doesn't really put you to sleep or anything like that, but it keeps you from getting that nervous anxiety. Now, I didn't really know that beta blockers could do that until I started working with this client, which is pretty cool. And a lot of the people I talk to, few of them are like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. But most people are like, really? I didn't even know that you could do that. That's really interesting. Well, we have two types of ads. We have some ads that are more explanatory, more like, hey, if you've got problems with public speaking and you're anxious, we've got something for you. Did you actually know that the reason you get anxious in public is because your body is overproducing adrenaline? You have an adrenaline spike. And did you know that there's this medication called a beta blocker? It's completely safe. It's been researched for decades and used for decades. And if you take a really, really, really minor dose as needed, it will block that overproduction of adrenaline to normalize your biology so that you can present and feel calm and confidently cool, right? Confidently cool is like a phrase that we use a lot with our messaging. So we've got some ads that kind of explain it. We've got other ads that are like, hey, come here to get your beta blockers. Because those other ads are very product forward, that we're assuming you know that what beta blockers do, that they can help with this. Come get your beta blocker. And those two ads perform different functions. If we look at our very forward, come here to get your beta blockers, those very forward ads, they get the best CPA by far. Really good CPA, but it's a smaller audience. It's not there. There are not as many people who are aware of that product. Whereas our other ones work well to get in those less aware people. They don't have the better CPA, but the audience they're going to is much, much, much greater. So it could be that that's ad sequencing. It could be that they're seeing our explainer ad and then later on they're buying from our product forward ad. That could be true, but it could just be, you know what, at any one point, there are different levels of awareness in your audience. And there are some people who are unaware that beta blockers can do that. And so we've got ads that target them, and other people are aware and we've got ads that target them. So it's not a sequencing thing. It's not that a process that they see this ad and then they see this ad, but it's more Facebook knows this person, for whatever reason, I'm going to assume they don't know this, and this is going to get them to convert. And this person, they're already aware of it. So I'm going to serve this ad to them. It allows Facebook to serve different ads to different levels of awareness so that they're engaging with that creative because of their different level of awareness. Now, why does that matter? Because if you did one or the other, if you did only the less aware ads or only the more aware ads, you would have a lower result. You wouldn't have the scale. Once you really want to get scale, you've got to do the more aware ads, the less aware ads, and everything in between to hit those different levels of awareness. Now, what that means is if you were to look in an ad set, because we're doing this, I'm just scaling them in the same ad set. If you were to look in that ad set, you might see our less aware ads getting more spend, but having a worse CPA. They have a more spend because there's more people who are in that less aware audience, but you get a worse CPA because you got to explain it and then it's just, not as likely. But our ads that are for that more aware audience, it's not getting as much spend, but we get a better CPA because they're right there ready for the taking. Now, if we only had one of the two of those, we wouldn't be able to hit both of those audiences. Facebook is able to give different amounts of spend to those two ads to hit those different audiences, which is why you may observe different levels of spend. That's why you may look and you may see, hey, this video right here, perhaps it was really going to an unaware top of funnel audience. Whereas the other ads that were doing better were more bottom of funnel focused. So these are kind of similar, but this is assuming that they view your ads like a sequence. And this is assuming they don't even view your other ads, but they are at that level of awareness before seeing your ads. All right. So that could be, I'm going to go ahead and I got a little more to explain, then we could take some questions, but this is imperative to understand and important for us to understand what are the reasons that an ad could get spend, because what we do from here on out is determined by why that ad gets spend. So let's say, for instance, all right, let me get this right here. So this brings us back to our question. Okay. What do we do with a bad ad inside of an ad set? Do we turn it off or we do not turn it off? Okay. We turn it off or not. I don't turn it off as long as it's hitting my target CPA. Like I mentioned before, as long as it's acceptable, I'm going to let it turn on. But in order to determine whether or not we turn it off, we've got to take an educated guess on why Facebook is giving spend to that ad in the first place. Now, I'm slow to turn things off. If you turn an ad back on in an ad set, it resets the learning, right? So I'm pretty slow to go ahead and do that. I like to keep it coasting as much as possible. So if I'm going to turn it off, I want to make sure that, I'm okay turning it off and leaving it for a while. So sometimes what I may see, I give Facebook time to figure it out. Facebook may adjust the weight on the bar and it kicks back into profitability, because if it's been a good employee for so long, right? If it's got a good history, and we talked about this before, if I'm looking back at 14 days and 7 days, it's the same principle before we looked at with budgeting. The only difference is, are we deciding to turn off and turn on and turn it off? I'm generally inclined to like give it a chance, give Facebook a chance at first rather than me just make a quick call. But one factor to consider is, do I have any replacements for this ad? If I've got 60 ads in my scaling campaign that are all doing really well, they're testing winners, I can be, I can be much more strict about turning those ads off. Another thing too, with my clients, like if my clients are like, we demand efficiency and we're really pushing the edge, right? If I know that I've got to get this account is on the razor's edge of profitability and I really have to eke out every little bit of efficiency, well, then that could be another reason for me to turn off sooner rather than later. But, well, what if the reason that an ad is getting spend is because of these early signals and these other signals? If it's early, and I think, remember, we look back right here, why do we get spend? Sometimes Facebook is just looking at these early signals and these other signals like engagement and stuff like that. If I think that it's just these early signals or these other signals that are throwing Facebook off, I'll turn it off. And I've observed this before, particularly in newer launches where one ad just gets a lot of, engagement. It'll get a bunch of people commenting. And all of a sudden Facebook is picking up, and the comments are like, it may have nothing to do with it being a good ad. It's just maybe someone trolled and other people argue with him or something. Like, I've seen this before. Or maybe it is something controversial in the ad that people respond to. Like, for instance, I heard of someone that did like an ad that featured, this was years and years ago, an ad that featured like Trump in it or something like that, and got a lot of people in the comments, arguing and everything. Well, guess what? Like, that's going to send a signal to the algorithm when they see all those arguments and all those comments that, hey, like, Facebook thinks this is a good ad. But in reality, that's a false signal. They're not getting comments because it's a good ad. They're getting comments because it's controversial and there's a comment war and everything else. Well, that could be a case where I'm just going to turn it off. It could be a case where a lot of times, like, let's say you put an image of a really attractive female in your ad. I've seen this before, where you get a bunch of hungry dudes clicking and a bunch of thirsty dudes clicking. And now all of a sudden that ad appears to Facebook, oh, it's got a really good signal of clicks, but they're not good clicks. They're not high intent clicks. It's not a good quality signal. So that may be a case where I see a bunch of spend going to that ad and it's not getting good results. And I can just say, okay, I think that I'm going to go ahead and kill this ad. Now I'd let it get, maybe have a chance to get some purchases, because if it's getting a bunch of clicks, like, it could work out. It could be like, yeah, this attractive female, like maybe people are purchasing off of that, right? So I'm going to give it a chance, but after it's got enough spend that I'm like, it should have had purchases by now, or it should have a better CPA than it has now. It's got a really bad CPA and it just keeps getting this spend. I look and I'm thinking, why is it getting that spend, right? That's the question I'm asking myself. If I'm looking to turn off an ad, why is it getting spend? Is it getting it because of these early signals, these other signals, looking at engagement, looking at stuff like that? If I think that's the reason why, I'm going to turn it off. But what is if it's sequencing, right? This is a case where if I think it's a sequencing thing, I'm going to try to leave it on. One question you can ask is, were the results there? And sometimes they trailed off, right? Sometimes Facebook just keeps spending and spending and spending on previously performing ads. In that case, I turn it off. So again, why is an ad getting spend? If it's a sequencing thing, or maybe this is like a, what did I call it? Awareness diversification. Right? I may leave it on because I'm thinking, hey, like, this is bringing in other people, and if I turn it off, like, maybe my overall results will get worse. This is one where, like, I'm more inclined, because they have a downstream effect. This is one where I'm more apt to turn off, you know, well, to keep on if it's marginal, but turn off if it's bad, right? Because the awareness diversification, it's the idea of, okay, it may be going to other audiences that I might not otherwise be getting, but if it's getting those audiences unprofitably, I can't do it. But if it's right on the edge, then maybe I take it in aggregate, right? And I look at it like that, and I try to come up with some other ads that hit that same level of awareness and do better. And again, like, okay, sometimes what I've seen is you have an ad. Why, again, go back to the question, why is Facebook spending on this ad? Sometimes I've seen it where you have a really good ad and Facebook is spending a lot, and then it starts to decline, and Facebook just keeps hammering it and keeps hammering it and keeps hammering it and keeps hammering it. It's like Facebook can't get it through its head that this ad has declining results. I may wait a little bit to see if it turns around or if Facebook starts to move the spend away. But if they just keep hammering this, then I'm probably going to go ahead and turn it off. And again, part of this is based off of, do I have replacements for it, right? Like if I've got other ads waiting in the wings, I'm much stricter about turning things off. Okay. Now, one final thing, it's kind of a corollary to what we've talking about. What do you do if you've got CBO and you've got a bad ad set in there? Well, if it's at my target or better than my target, if the CPA is under my, I should say, like, if the CPA is under my target, I'll leave it on, right? Is better than my target, I should say. Under meaning better, right? If it's worse, I'll turn it off at the ad level. Now, one thing you can do with CBOs is I've heard this. I've honestly never tested this to know if this works for certain, but I've heard it and I've just always done it because why not? If you turn off at the ad set level, if it's a bad ad set and you turn it off, that sometimes throws your CBO off. But what I've heard is if you turn off all the ads inside of that ad set, it accomplishes the same thing. It won't deliver anymore, but it doesn't throw the CBO off as much. Again, I don't know if it's true or that's an old wives' tale or whatever, but that's just the way I've typically done it because I heard that a couple years ago. I've never tested it, so it might be stupid, but why not just do it that way? So unless I really think it's a sequencing thing or an awareness diversification thing, like I've mentioned before, because most of the time when I'm doing ad sets in a CBO, I'm doing scale. I don't test with CBO a lot. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I'm using a CBO for my scaling environment. So I've got the same creatives in all of them. So most of the time, if one of them is not doing well, it's because the audience just isn't doing well, right? Is the ads are doing fine and the audience just isn't doing well. So with that, that kind of brings us to the conclusion of our talk for today. Got some questions here. Yeah, Ravi, it's the Ravi liked the ad sequencing and the awareness diversification. Cool. Awesome. And Ravi had to jet. So great. Any questions? Go ahead and raise your, Idan got a question. But anyone else, go ahead and raise your hand. We can get to your questions. Hopefully this made sense. But long story short, let me recap real quick, Idan, and then Eamon, I see your question. We'll get to you guys. To recap, really what it comes down to is understanding your target, understanding the context of the business situation at the moment and your account at the moment. Do you have lots of creative or do you really need to be efficient? All of these variables are kind of spinning around where you can then decide, how do I let that change how I adjust the budgets? And most of the time, what I'm doing is going in quite regularly and adjusting budgets up and down, putting more weight on the bar, putting and taking weight off of the bar to kind of equalize things and get things to where they need to be. Then in terms of an ad level, rarely am I turning things off, but occasionally you can see there's really early signals. There is just Facebook keeps spending on something that it can't get through its head that this isn't working. Rarely am I turning ads off, but sometimes I am. For the most part now, though, I'm trying to pay a lot more attention to this kind of idea of awareness diversification and this idea of ad sequencing so that I'm more inclined to leave things on now more than I was several years ago. So with that, Idan, what's your question?
I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one is, Is it a good way to, if I take like an ad set and I put different ads with different angles, and one is educating, the other is very outcome based, the third is like short one. Like, is it a good way to do it? Because if Facebook does that sequencing, maybe we can take advantage of it and actually use it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. I'm definitely in favor of that. The way I typically do it, and I think there, I think best practices are always evolving. Facebook, ever since iOS 14, has gone through a lot of changes, so that best practices are evolving. The way I'm doing it right now may evolve. Right now, the way I'm doing it is when I'm testing, I will put concepts together. So I'm not going to do that when I'm testing per se. But once I've got my tested, proven winners, then I absolutely will put all of those into an ad set or into like a Advantage Plus shopping campaign, into a scaling environment where they're just all there together. Absolutely. I think it's a great thing to do.
Okay, and how can you know actually when an ad is winning? Because it might be because of a sequence or something else in the ad set.
That's and that's a good question. And that's kind of where that's the question a lot of people are asking right now. With the reality of that happening, what do we do? So some people say, you know what? As long as an ad set is working, as long as if I've got an Advantage Plus shopping campaign, as long as it's working in aggregate, I'm not going to turn off ads ever. That's the approach a lot of people take. I'm not, as I've kind of explained in this call, I'm not personally of that opinion. But generally what I would do is just say, I'm very inclined to leave ads on. And then if it's winning, it's the one that's getting spend. I mean, you kind of know if the sequencing is at play because Facebook gives it spend, right? So if you're like, why is Facebook giving the spend and it's not looking great? At that point, I could ask myself, is this a sequencing thing? One thing to look for is if it has a lot of spend and it has a relatively low frequency. What that indicates is that it's going to these top of funnel audiences. Frequency is a good indication sometimes of is it going to a bottom of funnel? Is it going to a very aware type of audience? Because they're smaller, so it may go to those smaller audiences, but hit them again and again and again, which is why you would see a high frequency for a relatively small amount of spend. Whereas the more, top of funnel, less aware audiences, you would see the reverse. You might see it's got a lot of spend and a very relatively low frequency. That to me, if it has a lot of spend and a very low frequency, that to me would cue me up to this idea that it may be a sequencing issue, particularly if it's a video ad. I've seen this most often with video ads because I think watching the video gives Facebook a better signal that they can target you in the future, and just a clearer signal that they'll get in front of you again. So that's kind of how I'd go about it.
I see. So as long as it gets enough spend and the frequency makes sense, you get that it's a winning ad and you put it in the scaling ad set.
Well, for that, so if it's just testing, right? Typically I'm putting concepts together. So what I'm doing there is I'm looking and I'm seeing a lot of these video ads, like I personally, and again, best practices may change and evolve. I personally would not move an ad out to scaling if it's not hitting my CPA. Right. So if it's getting a lot of spend and it's hitting my CPA, hitting my target CPA, then I would move that out to scaling. But if it's not, I'm not going to move that out. I'm not going to move that out to scaling. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll test these concepts together. So I may have some videos that kind of serve the same rough type function, and I'm throwing them all in the same ad set. So I can pick the best one. And then if it's hitting my CPA, I'll put it into scaling. In the scaling environment is where I'm more inclined to let it spend and not to turn it off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to take much time. I'll start.
I guess the way of saying it is the sequencing thing. I believe it's true because I've observed it, but it is kind of one of those things that is hard to figure out because we just don't know like what's going on. Like there are clues, like I mentioned, the spend and the frequency. So generally I only kind of allow that as an allowance to leave something on if it's in my scaling campaign. If it's still in testing, I want it to meet my CPA goals. Does that make
I
sense?
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
better. I'll ask again. I don't wanna hold Ayman here with the
Sure.
end. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Ayman, what's up? Is it Ayman or Ayman?
Yeah, it's Ayman.
Ayman. Okay. Ayman, what's up?
Yeah. What's going on, man? Thank you for the call. Really great information. So I have quick question regarding a campaign that I'm running at the moment. So it's working good. It's like 25% of my targeted CPA. So it's great.
Yeah.
But I have also another ads within the ad set. So one of them is twice the targeted CPA, and the others are like getting like low spend, like around $5, something like that. So it's negligible. What I did is I turned off the ad. It's like twice spend, but I also turned off the others and only kept like the one that is meeting the KPIs.
Mhm.
Is that the good way of doing it, or
Yeah. What happened when you did that?
it's just CPA increased, but it's not like, so it went from 25% up to, let's say, I know it's around 10% or 50% of the target CPA.
Okay.
So it's still within KPI.
So how many ads total were in that ad set?
About 8.
8. Okay. So you had, so if I'm hearing you right, you had a couple ads in an ad set. The ad set in aggregate was getting a really good result, 25% CPA for that ad set, right?
No, for the ad, on the ad level.
For the
So one
ad,
of the
okay.
ads, yeah, one of the ads is getting 25% of the,
Gotcha. What was it at the
yeah,
ad set level?
on the ad set level is like within KPI, like just target CPA.
Yeah. How was it? Was it like 25%, 50%, something like that?
It was like the same. So if my CPA, let's say it's $50, it was like the CPA is $50 on the
Okay.
ad set level. Mhm.
Got it. And so you turned off some ads that were getting spend but didn't have the best results, and your ad set results got better.
No, it got
Okay.
worse.
So your ad set results got worse.
Mhm.
Okay. So it sounds like, I mean, that in turning off the ads, maybe it was that breakdown effect in place, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, in turning off the ads. So it sounds like you turned off ads and basically things got on the aggregate ad set level, things got worse.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that would be at this point, like I wouldn't worry about it at this point. I wouldn't go turn them back on personally.
Mhm.
I don't like to turn things back on. It kind of throws things off a little.
Yeah.
So if it were me, I would like just let this ride as long as it's still an acceptable CPA.
Mhm.
Then if it starts to kind of dip and not do well, then at that point maybe you turn those ads back on, and see, hey, is this worth, testing out to see if that could kick things back into performance. But that's a great real life example, right? We can look at that and we could say, why were those ads getting spend? Is it the breakdown effect? Is it, was there a reason why they got spend that they shouldn't have got spend? And it sounds like it was kind of the breakdown effect at real life example of that. And in hindsight, if you could rewind the clock, maybe you're saying you would have wished you would have left those on.
Um, I don't think so. So like two of the ads are not like within KPIs. So my targets, or at least my target is CPC. So if they are not within the target CPC, I would just turn them off. Whether they are, unless they are performing. So if they didn't get like what I'm doing right now, if they are like if they spend $10 and they are not within the target CPC, I turn them off.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you could do that, right? I would be one to say generally, like, I'm going to I'm going to launch ads and not turn any of them off as long as my ad set as a whole is getting me acceptable results in aggregate. Then what I would do is evaluate where the spend goes. And if I get an ad really getting a decent amount of spend and it's just not getting good results, then I ask myself, why is that? And if I think it's, hey, it's getting good engagement, it's just getting these early signals, then I may be inclined to turn that off. But otherwise, for the most part, I'm just going to, if the aggregate results in the ad set are okay, I'm just going to leave them on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lon. That
Of
makes
course.
sense. Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, with this type of stuff, it's not like there's a strict right and wrong.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, you get 100 people in a room, you're going to have 100 different ways of doing this.
That's true. Yeah. Thank
Cool.
you.
Cool. Chris.
Hey man, so
Hey.
if I'm still in like the offer test mode, and when I did the ABO in there, I noticed like I did a couple of different ad sets based off audiences, but like Facebook picked the winner pretty quick, it seemed like, and just started allocating like a big percentage of the budget to it.
Mm-hmm.
So would you have like in that case, would you try to see like a minimum like reach on the ads, or would you look for those early signals to try to call it, or not even touch it and just
Look at the signals. Like, what would be the purpose? Like, you to decide what?
to decide like if it's to decide to let it keep spending like 10% of the budget. Basically, it doesn't get enough, like anywhere near the budget to get a book call, I guess, or unless I'm thinking about this wrong. If it's,
So you had an ABO. So you do an ABO, you're saying?
yes. Yep.
Okay. And so you had an ad set, and one ad in that ad set got the overwhelming majority of the spend.
Yeah, I did two ABOs with two different interests. I noticed pretty much the same thing. Like it pretty much went after one of them right away and just started like spending the majority of that budget there.
Yep. And so your question is, how should you evaluate the other ads?
Yeah, do you just let them run and then if it hits it, do you just, I guess, like duplicate and scale the one that's got the ad spend and hit the CPA, or yeah,
I just let them run. I just let them run, right? Because are you getting acceptable results as a whole for that ad set?
Yes.
Yeah, then I would let them run, right? So Facebook has picked one and it said, hey, this is the best, and you're getting good results. So rather than monkey with it and try to say, all right, let me like try to turn things off and manually force spend to these or whatever, I would just let it run. And what you're gonna do is over time, more and more spend will go to those ads. Facebook will likely still prioritize that one for some time to come. But even though it's giving the lion's share of the budget to that ad, the others are kind of along for the ride, and there's no reason really to turn them off because they're going to get a little bit of spend here and there. And then at some point, you'll be able to look back and they'll have enough spend perhaps to evaluate, right?
I see.
And as long as the ad set's working as a whole, I would just leave them on.
Until they get enough data, you could potentially evaluate them at that point.
Yeah, and I'm not really worried about turning ads off that are getting a small amount of spend. What I would be worried about is Facebook spending 90% of my budget on an ad and it's not working, right? That's when you decide maybe I need to consider turning this off because all the spend is going here. If the spend isn't going to, if it's a 2% of the spend, then I just let it run, right? Because even if it's not a great ad, it's 2% of the spend, and Facebook will kind of perhaps figure it out, right?
And if it is going to one ad and that ad set is failing, would you turn that whole ad set off and just reduplicate it, or?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And that is, there's a lot of variables to that, right? So what I would do is, it comes down to the question like, why? Why do we think this isn't working? Is it an ad thing? Is it an audience thing? Is it, we've got to kind of come up with some hypotheses, even if it's like an educated guess, because that determines what we're going to do, right? If you think it's an offer thing, we could duplicate till the end of time. It's not going to change it.
Yeah.
If it's an audience thing, let's try a different audience. Let's go back to an audience that worked. If this is our control audience and these are new ads, okay, well, maybe these ads didn't work. You could duplicate, like if you have reasons to believe like, hey, like I think these ads are really good. Like, if you're a copy expert, messaging expert, and you're like, hey, these ads are really good, and this is similar to messaging we've done before. This is our control audience. Like, this is a great landing page. Like, I think things are good, and then maybe just duplicate, give it another shot. But it all comes down to figuring out why things weren't working.
Got it.
That makes
Awesome.
sense.
All right. Thanks,
Cool.
Lauren.
Of course. Idan.
So following up on the question ad, when we okay, so if I have like so when I'm testing like a few concepts in one ad set, and then when I have a winning ad that hits my CPA, I'll take it to the scale ad set, even though it might be sequencing, and even if it's not sequencing.
Yes. Yep. So if
Right.
you've got your tests and you've got an ad that's a proven winner that's doing well, it's getting spend, it's getting a good CPA, then you can take it at that point and move it to your scaling.
Regardless of if it has, sorry. So regardless if it has the sequencing thing or other ads that support it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would still move it to the scaling environment because you don't know, right? It might be that, oh, I'm just benefiting from the sequencing, or oh, this is a really bottom of funnel type of ad. I mean, it could be, but what happens is when you move it to the scale, then then Facebook kind of has another chance to distribute the spend to it or not. And you may find that Facebook kind of senses like, hey, this was benefiting from the sequence, so I'm not going to give it as much spend. It's going to be part of my army of ads that I have, but it's going to serve this role. Or Facebook could see, ooh, this is really good. I'm going to give a lot of scale to this. So generally what I do is I will move it to scaling, and then I'll let Facebook kind of decide to do with it at that point and keep an eye on it and see if it's, if it still tends to prove itself. Generally, once you get to that scaling environment, Facebook's pretty good about figuring it out.
Mhm.
So I don't
So
think it'll be a big issue.
you'd move all of them basically.
Yep, your proven winners. Yep. I like to move all my proven winners into scaling. So I just have, a bunch of ads in my scaling environment. Might be 10, 20, 30, 40.
Yeah, so you take like all of the winnings and the sequencing and all of the ads that might support it. You'll take all of them in. That's perfect. Got you.
Yep. All the tested winners. I just throw them in my scaling environment and I let Facebook figure it out.
Got you. And my last question
Mhm.
is, what about putting ads in an ad set? Like we spoke about removing ads, turning them off, but what about adding new ads, new
Yeah.
concepts, messages?
Good question. Good question. So typically, if it's a test, I don't like to do that. Like the way I'll launch my test and I'll kind of keep them untouched in terms of putting things in. I'll just independently scale them up or scale them down. And then I'll launch new tests and additional ad sets, a new test and additional ad sets, a new test and additional ad sets. So I may have 5, 10, 15, 20 or more ad sets of these tests that I'm just kind of scaling up independently. In my scaling campaign, yeah, that's what I'm doing currently, and is just taking my tested winners once I have some good tested winners and just moving them over to scaling, just moving them over to my scaling environment and just adding them in. That is something that I'm not doing often. Like I kind of wait to a point where like maybe things aren't great, or maybe I have a downturn in performance, and then I'll pump a bunch of those in. And sometimes maybe I turn off some ads in my scaling campaign that I turned off previously. I turn them back on, and then give that scaling kind of some new life.
I see, because it might put the campaign in learning again.
Yeah, it does, but a lot of it depends on like if it's, and a lot of this depends. It's contextual, right? So if I'm doing an AC funnel, if I'm doing like an ecom funnel, I'm spending a lot, and I've got lots of purchases. I'm getting enough data where Facebook will be able to figure it out pretty quickly. Like it's not going to slow that campaign down that much. If I'm doing more like a book a call where it's really slow grind, I'm much less inclined to upset the apple cart there. So a lot of it is very contextual, but for the most part, yeah, if you're getting a lot of data, just add them in.
Got you, and thank you very much. And I'm sorry
Of
that I
course.
had so many questions. I love to geek
No,
out and
I love
about
the
that.
don't ever apologize. Thank you for asking questions. It makes the call valuable for everyone. I'm happy to get to your questions. So of course. Eamon.
Yo, Lauren. So a quick one. What's the minimum results or purchases, let's say, that you look for before like moving the ad to a scaling campaign?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first of all, I'm kind of considering the context of where the account is. Sometimes uh, we're running behind on creative, and we needed new creative yesterday. And where CPA is, I mean, our results are declining, and the client is, what are we doing? Let's go, let's go, let's go. In that case, I am less inclined to be picky. And I'm like, okay, you're getting some pretty early results. Let's move you out, because even if you're not a tested winner per se, you're semi-tested, and I'm desperate. Other times you may get the opposite environment where like we're cruising along, we've got lots of creative. I'm just going to let this ride. I'm just going to let it. I'm just going to independently scale this up and just get a bunch of just get a bunch of results for this post ID, and until I get to a point where it feels like a good time to move it in and kind of upset the apple cart a little with the learning really slightly, and move in a bunch of creative at once. So a lot of it really comes down to that type of contextual environment. That's the way I'm generally thinking about things more often than like, you are at 10 purchases. So I've heard people say 10. I don't know why. It's just an arbitrary number. But rather than say like you are at 10 purchases, you've got acceptable CPA, I'm more inclined to move them out depending on where my account is. And sometimes you just have a feeling like you have some creative, and let's say it might not have tested results in the sense of like a volume of purchases, but it's getting an amazing CPA, and like my spidey sense just tells me it's a really strong ad. I may be more inclined to move that out earlier than I would another ad. So there's lots of variables involved, but that kind of shows you the way I'd be thinking about it.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Kevin, I saw you unmute yourself for a little bit. If you want to say anything, you can chime in, but
No, this was great.
oh, cool.
I have a tendency, my freely associative thinking brain tends to just want to interrupt.
No. Don't, just interrupt anytime, man. You could have interrupted. No worries.
No, you're good. One thing that's jumping out of me is like I'm doing a ton of creative at the moment, like literally internal offer working on, and before we even launch anything, I've got like probably like 600 ad tests. Like we're gonna have zero issues on the creative side, like none. So much so that like even we're converting the videos from like 9x16 to 1x1 and 16x9. That's how much video we've created. So it's like I'm almost considering one of these like tests would be like a couple of things. I'm going to be testing like taking the same videos, putting them all in the same campaign, but like swapping the intro hook, like just some sort of like disruptive intro. But also then with that intro hook, then I'm going to try the 1x1, the 9x16, and the 16x9. Throw them in. It's like which form factor is winning. And it's like I think when you get to so much creative, I can see how you're thinking. Like for example, Chris's question earlier when he was asking about the video ads, like these ones aren't getting spent. It's like, but the other audience haven't been tested, and it's like, yeah, but from what we know, but his account is a video ad, right? And so Facebook is getting that leading indication of who's clicking and watching this video in this audience, and it's like we haven't tested the audience. No, they've tested 15 impressions of similar age demos, and they're just like they've all gotten to 3 seconds, whereas these guys are all in second 15 or 18. So like that leading indicator is just like the consumption is there. That's probably what they know. But I'm even thinking of it through that in terms of like similar stuff. Just like let's play with the form factor of the same ads. Have you been doing any of that in terms of like on the 9x16, 16x9, 1x1? What are you seeing with regards to that? Like it varies by account, obviously, and whatever creative you've got. But are you seeing any where it's like we have one ad and it's like it works better as a 9x16, or like does it change distribution? Like I'm just kind of more interested in that because we've got this like pre-launch ton of work being done, like obviously still working with offers, but like this internal one is it's a monster. I'm ready to scale it way too hard.
Yeah. I would be interested in testing a 4x5.
Okay.
That is so Facebook, if you do a 916, I always get confused, 16, 9, 9. Anyway, if you do 916, Facebook will crop that when it's in the Facebook feeds. And I believe they crop it in the Instagram feed as well. Like so they'll crop it to a 4x5. Now it will still run 9x16 in like stories and reels and certain placements. But so what I have done before is like take a 9:16 video, but just make it in such a way that it could be cropped and it wouldn't be awkward. I've had some videos where like, they crop someone's face right here, or the captions are like hanging off you can't read the captions because they're only half on the screen because it's cropped out. So you could do like a 9:16 that you're okay with cropping to 4:5. But I honestly just am like, why don't I do a 4:5 and I'm in control of where it crops. And I know I don't I don't have to worry about that. And also if you do a 4:5, when it goes to like stories or reels, it puts like some of your ad text elements, like your headline, your body copy above and below. So I think it just strengthens it, because previously, what did you have there? Nothing, because you wanted to, you had to be comfortable with it being cropped out. So it was essentially just dead space. Or I guess you could have put something, so I've been testing more 4:5. So that'd be something to test. I haven't really done a ton of those tests. The one time I tested it with a client, believe it or not, 1:1 actually did the best. And this was like a year ago, so things might have changed.
Varies by market as well. Like you're like there's no black and white rules with this. You got to test everything, which is the nature of it. Like, but it's just any thematic patterns. It sounds like no is the answer. Although the 4:5 one is one. I haven't been. I thought it was 9:16 uniform across all the kind of mobile platforms. But Facebook goes to 4:5. I didn't know that. So
yep.
Maybe it's got some work.
Yeah, 4:5s would be what I would recommend. And then keep me posted, see what it does. That would be an interesting test, just to see. But honestly, most of the time that I'm working with people, like I think that one client, we tested it, but most of the time we'll just run with what like is easy. We'll just produce one asset. We'll produce 4:5, generally 1:1, because it's like it's just a production thing. It's like we could test it, but it's just a little less for their video editors to do. We could just take those resources and then apply them elsewhere.
Yeah. I like in terms of the call, what you were saying here as well. Just I like the conceptually, the idea of just looking at the ad. Like, it doesn't even matter if it's a CBO or an ABO, but like if we've X creative in there and the ad set is at or near KPI, the stuff that's like in there, like you're right, the sequencing, it's like it's so little spend that these just could be passing scroll impressions that are enough to be one of these like multi-touch point type events that's enough, that's actually carrying the campaign, and we just can't see it. And it would be great eventually if Facebook would start being able to like attribute based on impression of a campaign. Like, this is how we're sequencing. That'd be a super thing.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that'd be really tough, because I mean, people would see, I just think about like me, like how many times do I see one ad and buy? Like a lot of times I may be viewing ads for like 3 weeks or something before I just, so that would be a real challenge. And then
also sometimes where they cap the top end of.
Yeah, and Facebook has been the type where like Facebook has been where there's some things like engaged audiences, like what do they call it? The audience segments, where you can look at so there's this new thing I talked about on one call. You can set audience segments in your account where you can say like, here are my engaged customers or my engaged audience, and then here are my existing customers. And that way it will show you, of this audience, you can break it down, say 10% of them were your engaged audience and 5% of them were your existing purchasers. Like, it's really good info to help you know kind of what you're hitting. But the problem is that audience of your engaged audience, you can't set that with like anything on platform. So you can't set it with like people who have viewed your videos or people who have engaged with your Facebook page, your Instagram page. You can only set it with off-platform stuff. And I believe the reason for that, my hypothesis, is Facebook doesn't want you to know that, because like the more data they give you, I think it would probably confuse more people, and they just want to like somewhat limit the amount of data that you have so that you don't go crazy. Like, I think that's kind of the approach there.
One thing in terms of how are you managing accounts where it's like you've primary offer and then secondary offers, in terms of like this one doesn't drive the boat, but like all purchasers are like pre-vetted, and let's like drive them to the other, horizontal offers essentially. How are you managing that? Is it like based on literally just retarget purchasers back over? Like I've been kind of playing with that, with any clients I've been consulting with it. And it's like that's kind of that's a murky zone for me. This is like this one doesn't convert cold, but it work as part of a back end email, and we're targeting teams to work on it. But we can't seem to I'm just wondering what you like. What do you guys, or what's your perspective on that type of structure for clients?
Yeah, there's a few different ways we do it, all just depending on kind of your gut instinct of how you think the sequencing should go with that purchase. Sometimes we run it independently, right? If it's like two, like, ebooks, right? If you got like a catalog model and you got a lot of front ends, we're just running those two front ends like they're independent of each other. Sometimes it might be more like we've got an AC funnel and then we've got a webinar, and we're running those like independently of each other. Other times it could be that we're running something, and the strategy is to retarget people who didn't buy. Like, you're running maybe webinar to book a call for high ticket, and then the strategy is maybe 2 weeks later you give them some lower ticket type of product, like if that is the business strategy. So I guess I would say a lot of times the Facebook strategy follows the overall marketing strategy on that for how they picture the sequencing working. Sometimes we're running stuff where they want to exclude it, where if you purchase this, we don't want you to purchase this, because they both serve as they're a back end model kind of driven or whatever, and so there's business decisions they make like that, but every situation is a little different. But generally, like if it's like two AC models or something like that leading into the same place, you just run them independently.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, super.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that, like, again, every account's different and every company's different. I think this is like all any question you ask anyone, it's like there's never a black and white yes or no exact process. It's just, you gotta feel it out, but it's nice you can just talk through, like, creating hypothesis and just like different perspective, like how would you approach this? It gives you another other angles to, like, like other ways of thinking about what other ways could I approach this, right? Yeah, super. Okay,
Cool.
I've got live lunch calls here now in a bit, so I got.
Oh yeah, you got a jet. Go to your hot seats.
But super cool, dude. Really enjoyed this.
Of course. Idan.
I remember a while back you said that it's a nightmare working with an offer that isn't validated. And my question is, like, how do you approach it? Because right now I'm going through it, and I don't know, like, if the problem is on the ad, ad level, or the funnel level. And
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was a nightmare. It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge, to be sure. It's not something like from the depths of hell, like never do it. Like, no, but it's a challenge because it's exactly what you're talking about, right? Hey, we did this. It didn't work. Why? Was it the ad? Was it the landing page? Was it the audience? Was it the offer? Like, what was it about this entire process that was not effective? And that's what gets to be problematic. So how do you go about it? A lot of it is kind of gut feel, but I think, and it's challenging, that it's challenging enough that sometimes you need to have someone with experience who can weigh into that. And I think that's the benefit of, like, hey, talking to Alan or something like that, or, Kevin is great at this stuff, and the coaches, we try to be good at this stuff for you. So asking, someone with experience. And it's kind of ironic too, because are you working on your own thing or working on a client thing?
So both. I have
Okay.
my own offer and my clients, which
cool.
I'm launching soon. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those, difficult issues that a lot of times newer media buyers, it's hard for them to land established clients. So they're landing the newer offers. So it's like, but the newer offers are sometimes so hard to work with. And, it's one of those things where just the way that the business works, sometimes newer media buyers end up working with newer offers, which are the most challenging to do out of the gate. And the newer offers they're working with, like, a lot of times it's unreasonable clients who it's their first time working with a media buyer. Like, they don't know what they're doing. So it gets to be challenging. But here's the approach I would take. I think of it, I think I've mentioned this before. I think of it in terms of a funnel, right? Not just funnel like, okay, they're going to buy my front end and they're going to take my upsell. Like, no. from the point they see my Facebook ad in the scroll, right, all the way to the point where they buy everything that I have. I look at every single step of that way. So every single one of those steps you can get data on. So if it stops the scroll, does our ad stop the scroll and get people to click on see more, or get people to watch our video? Well, then we can look at our CTR all. We can look at our rate of playing the first 3 seconds of a video, or your video view. We can look at, if it's a video, do they play it to a certain point? If it's body copy, do they end up clicking over to our landing page, right? With a video, do they end up clicking to our landing page? Well, then we can look at CTR. We can look at link clicks. Do those people convert to landing page views? Is the page fast enough that they stick around for the pixel to load? So we look at link clicks to landing page views. Once they're on our landing page, let's say it's an AC model, do they opt in for that 2-step checkout, right? How many people then convert? Or if it's a webinar, how many people watch opt in for the webinar? How many people attend the room? How many people watch to the 5-minute mark? All these various data points we can get. And then what we do is we compare those data points to kind of an expected percentage. So for this type of, and this is where it takes a little bit of experience, but you can ask us here in NHB. But all right, what would we expect for this type of funnel, for this type of market? What would we expect for those different data points and the conversion rates between those different data points? And then we can see, where does our reality differ from that expectation the most? What breakdowns do we see? What bottlenecks do we see? And if we start to see, you know what? We are getting a lot of response to our ads. We're getting a lot of clicks. We're getting great CTR all. People are clicking over to our landing page. We're getting the landing page that the pixel is firing. So our link click to landing page view is looking really good. But you know what? We aren't getting a lot of people opting in. Well, then okay, that can lead the direction we go from here on out. We don't need to worry about our upsell. We don't need to worry about our cart completion rate, because it's that point that is our bottleneck. So we need to worry about everything before that. Now, the unfortunate thing is, if we're seeing that a lot of people are getting to our landing page, but they're not opting in, we might think initially, that means the problem is our landing page, right? Because the ad metrics are looking good. It's just our landing page is not getting people to opt in. And that may be the problem. But in actuality, the problem could be anything before that. It could be our ads. It could be we brought in the wrong type of people on our ads, right? So that's why they're not opting in. And that's where it does take a little bit of a judgment call. But what you do, the process is map out your entire funnel, get your data for your entire funnel, compare that to expectations, figure out where your bottleneck is, and then fix that bottleneck based off of changing what came before that. Right? Once you do that, then it's just it's a process of repeating that and repeating that and repeating that until you start to get things kind of moving again in the direction it should be. That's the basic process.
Got you. That's
Cool.
perfect.
Awesome. Of course.
Thank you very, very much.
No, of course. All right. Well, I think that was all the hands and all the questions in the chat. So great. Hope this was a good call for you guys. I had fun geeking out with you as always. Reading offers will be for Charles, I believe, next week. I always like to talk about when the reading offers calls are coming because I think those are so fun and so valuable. Charles will be doing the next reading offers call on Monday, I believe, Friday. So that'll be, this coming Monday. And then the Friday after that, so a week from this Friday, Brandon will be doing his reading offers call. I believe that is the cadence we've gotten into. So we kind of got a new schedule now with the reading offers calls. So it'll hopefully stick like that from here on out. After Brandon, then Alan will be the first Thursday of the month. And then after Alan's call, I'll be the next one. And we're going to then Kevin's after that. We'll kind of try to get the schedule going again. So that's awesome. Let me know. Thank you. And don't be sorry, Idan, for asking too many questions. It's great. If anyone has any topics you want to talk about, you want to say, hey, I got a question about this or this or this, post in Discord or hit me up in private always so I can just figure out how to make these calls valuable and everything else like that. We're always here for you in Discord. So any questions you have, just hit us up. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And for those who celebrate, happy Easter coming up. So happy Easter. He's risen. All right. See you guys.